This poor couple scraped by each day, selling goods from their truck. The husband, deaf since birth, communicated with his wife solely through sign language. They were excitedly awaiting the arrival of their soon-to-be-born child. Fortuitously, Dr. Nat, a physician at a prestigious hospital, offered to cover all expenses for the wife's delivery at his hospital. Upon reading the message, the wife wept with gratitude. The husband, too, was overjoyed upon hearing the good news. Dr. Na Yiji was known for his exceptional skill and his compassion for the poor. He intended to pay for the couple's medical bills out of his own pocket, despite a nurse's reminder, "You're not exactly well off yourself." That evening, a wealthy young man, Einar, recklessly sped through the city in his sports car. He was furious that his half-brother, not he, had been appointed CEO of the family's conglomerate, T. Kang, due to their father, the chairman, suffering from dementia. Einar argued with his sister, a lawyer, blaming her for his failure to secure the inheritance. While driving, he aggressively cut off and overtook a delivery truck, then abruptly stopped at an intersection, forcing the deaf driver to slam on the brakes. Fortunately, his pregnant wife was unharmed. The husband honked repeatedly, urging the sports car to move. Einar, enraged by the incessant honking, exited his car and retrieved a club from the trunk. He demanded the truck driver get out. Before the driver could react, Einar began viciously attacking the truck with the club, leaving the terrified couple cowering inside. Enraged by the assault on his precious vehicle, the husband seethed. His wife pleaded with the young man to leave them alone. Einar's sister intervened, warning, "If you're not home soon, Mom will be furious." Hearing this, Einar stopped. However, seeing the truck driver pull away and seemingly glare at him, he flew into another rage. He pursued the truck in his sports car, hurling insults at the couple, calling them pathetic, impoverished wretches. Meanwhile, the conglomerate's CEO, Einar's half-brother, called their sister. Learning of Einar's childish tantrum, he gave an order to his subordinates. "Since it's about to rain, arrange a fatal accident for me. I don't want to see that spoiled brat's face again." Rain was now pouring. Einar continued to tail the couple's truck. He cut them off again, blocking their path at an intersection. The husband, trying to avoid further confrontation, attempted to drive away, but Anna reversed, blocking him once more. At that moment, a figure in a black hat drove straight towards them. To avoid the collision, Einar accelerated, pushing his sports car forward. The other car slammed into the couple's truck. The impact sent the truck spinning, and it was subsequently hit by other vehicles on the road. Oblivious to the horrific scene behind him, the wealthy young man drove away, thinking, "It's just a normal accident in the rain." All those injured in the accident were brought to T. Kang Hospital, where Dr. Na worked. Everyone was in critical condition due to the impact. Dr. Na attended to one patient and realized it was the deaf husband he had promised to help with the delivery costs. He immediately began chest compressions, desperately trying to revive him. The expectant father regained consciousness briefly, looked around frantically for his wife, and managed to communicate to Dr. Na, "My wife is here too." Seeing the husband's distress, Dr. Na promised, "I'll find your wife and child and treat them." However, moments later, the disabled husband slipped back into unconsciousness. His heart stopped beating. Dr. Na immediately used the defibrillator, but after several attempts, the monitor displayed only a flat line. Refusing to give up, he resumed manual compressions, hoping to cling to the last shred of hope for the poor man. Suddenly, the nurse announced, "The patient is deceased." Just then, the wife, sitting on a gurney, despite her exhaustion, struggled to get down. She crawled towards her husband for one last look. Witnessing the pregnant wife, tears streaming down her face, desperately calling out to her deceased husband, no one could hold back their emotions. Then, the pregnant wife collapsed. Dr. Na checked her and found she was losing consciousness. A CT scan revealed cerebral edema. He immediately ordered, "Get a neurosurgeon and an obstetrician. We have to save this mother." However, a medical staff member replied, "No one is available right now, and there are no operating rooms free." Without hesitation, Dr. Na commanded, "Take her to the treatment room. I'll perform the surgery myself." The expectant mother was taken to the treatment room and prepped for brain surgery. Her head was shaved as Dr. Na began the procedure to save her life. Outside, someone was yelling, demanding to see Dr. Na Yiji personally. He ignored the commotion, focused on the surgery. Suddenly, the wealthy young man burst into the operating room. He shouted, "Dr. Na, examine my sister. She's the face of T-Kang Group. I hear you're the best doctor here, so you have to treat her personally." Dr. Na checked the young woman's chart and examined her. He found only minor scrapes, no serious injuries. Calmly, he requested, "Everyone out." However, Yi H1, the young man, grabbed Dr. Na and threatened, "Make sure my sister doesn't get any scars on her face. Do you know my family built this hospital? I don't care who's lying there, my sister comes first." Dr. Na retorted, "So you're the hospital chairman's son, but you don't understand the law. Threatening a doctor during surgery can get you 5 years in prison. Get out, or I'll call the police." The young man blustered further threats, but finally stormed off. Dr. Na sat down and resumed the surgery to save the mother and her unborn child. But then, the hospital director appeared and demanded that Dr. Na attend to the chairman's daughter. Dr. Na refused. However, the nurse beside him said, "The patient is stable for now." So, he gave strict instructions, "If anything happens, inform me immediately." But as he left, the hospital director signaled to the staff, "Don't tell Dr. Na anything." The director led Dr. Na to the young man who had caused the accident. After an examination, Dr. Na confirmed, "The lawyer shows no signs of any significant injuries." He turned to leave for the operating room. But Yi H1 threatened again, "If you take one step out of here, your medical career is over." The hospital director echoed the threat, but Dr. Na defiantly walked back towards the operating room. Upon arrival, he discovered the expectant mother had been without a heartbeat for almost 3 minutes. He immediately used the defibrillator, but to no avail. Undeterred, Dr. Na continued manual compressions, desperately trying to revive the mother. But it was too late. Dr. Na's promise to the deaf husband to save his wife and child was broken, thwarted by a spoiled, entitled young man. In despair, Dr. Na pleaded, "Scalpel, we need to save the baby." But that too was no longer possible. Dr. Na Yiji sat dejectedly outside when the arrogant young master Yi H1 approached him and sneered, "If the patient from earlier died because of your negligence, your license will be revoked, won't it? And I'm certain you won't be able to treat another patient ever again." Suddenly, the police appeared. Someone had filed a complaint accusing Dr. Na of negligence resulting in the patient's death, and he was promptly arrested. The smug young master declared, "I told you I'd put an end to your medical career." Dr. Na, filled with rage and resentment, glared at the wealthy man's triumphant expression. 3 years passed. Dr. Na now visited a prison to meet with an immensely powerful woman. She was incarcerated for hiring someone to murder her husband's young and beautiful mistress. Mrs. O had repeatedly attempted to postpone her execution using various methods and excuses, but the prosecutor had rejected them all. Dr. Na, however, promised to get her out. "I've reviewed the documents you submitted to the prosecutor. It seems your body is a supermarket of illnesses. Stroke, liver cancer, neurological issues, asthma, osteoporosis, acid reflux, you've got it all. But we need to add one more, genetically inherited Fanconi anemia. I dug around and found out your family had a sister who died of congenital heart disease. That's also a symptom of Fanconi anemia. No one's going to bother investigating a death from 40 years ago. You also have liver cancer, which is advantageous, since 25% of people with Fanconi anemia are diagnosed with malignant tumors." Mrs. O, intrigued, asked, "What do I need to do now?" Dr. Na instructed, "You need to wreck your body. Make your eyes as dull as possible, as tearing and cataracts are symptoms of this anemia. Take the pills I'm giving you, they'll accelerate the process. Cut holes in your clothes and sunbathe, as brown spots on the skin are also a symptom. If you sleep no more than 2 hours a day and generally abuse your body, you'll start getting nosebleeds. That's a clear sign of this genetic disease. This medication will weaken your overall condition. You might even experience cardiac arrest." Mrs. O asked, "What if my heart stops beating?" Dr. Na replied, "Timely resuscitation will take care of that." Trusting him, Mrs. O swallowed the pill. She then presented her ravaged body to Prosecutor Young for examination and approval of a stay of execution. The doctor examined Mrs. O's eyes and body. All the signs pointed to Fanconi anemia. Then, he witnessed her struggling to breathe and suffering a nosebleed, concluding, "Mrs. O does have Fanconi anemia. Get her to a hospital quickly, she could die." Prosecutor Young, however, remained unconvinced and refused to grant the stay. Suddenly, Mrs. O went into cardiac arrest, collapsed, and was rushed to the hospital by ambulance. At the hospital, Mrs. O, a prominent figure in the business world, attracted considerable media attention. Later, Mrs. O returned to her usual aristocratic appearance, slightly worse for wear, but relieved to be out of her prison uniform. However, she wondered, why weren't there more reporters around me earlier? Am I not as popular as I used to be? The doctor explained, "There's a hotter story right now." Mrs. O watched the news and learned that Lee Yi-Hwan, the young master of the T. Kang Corporation, had been sentenced to 3 years in prison for drug possession and use. The doctor said, "That's why all the reporters are there, and he's being sent to TCO prison." Mrs. O recalled that Dr. Na had asked her to write a letter of recommendation for him to apply for the position of medical director at TCO prison, in exchange for getting her out. Dr. Na had said, "I want to see someone in that prison, and he'll be arriving soon." Mrs. O now realized that Dr. Na was clearly targeting the young master. Mrs. O called Dr. Na and asked, "You want to become the prison's medical director to get to Yi-Hwan, don't you?" Dr. Na replied, "I'm on my way to the prison to start the job right now." Once inside the prison, the guards surrounded Dr. Na, peppering him with questions. They were puzzled. With his advanced skills, why would he choose to work in a prison? He explained, "I'm not here for the money. I simply want to help ensure that inmates receive timely emergency care, even when advanced medical equipment is lacking." As Dr. Na turned to leave, the current medical director asked, "Haven't we met before?" Dr. Na replied, "Indeed, I spent some time here before." Meanwhile, Lee Yi-Hwan was being transported to the prison to begin his sentence. At an intersection, the traffic light malfunctioned. As their bus started moving again, 2 inmates fastened their seatbelts. Suddenly, a dump truck barreled towards them. Yi-Hwan frantically tried to buckle his seatbelt, but the truck slammed into his side of the bus, sending it rolling. Yi-Hwan crawled out of the wreckage, severely injured. A black car arrived, and a man in a black suit emerged, carrying bolt cutters. Looking up, Yi-Hwan recognized Dr. Na, the doctor whose career he had ruined 3 years earlier. Dr. Na cut off Yi-Hwan's handcuffs. Examining him, he discovered a shard of rib had punctured the young master's lung. He would die within 10 minutes without immediate medical attention. Yi-Hwan said confidently, "My mother, the chairwoman, will send someone to take me to a hospital. You think she'd let me stay in prison with these filthy criminals?" Dr. Na replied, "I came here to put you in prison." He then performed a procedure to drain the blood from Yi-Hwan's lung and started enrollment 4. The 2 inmates from the bus, unharmed thanks to their seatbelts, also emerged. Dr. Na began treating the other injured inmates trapped in the bus. Soon, ambulances and police cars arrived. However, Dr. Na and the 2 inmates had already taken Yi-Hwan away. Dr. Na insisted on going to Heiyun Hospital, the only one not under the T. Kang Corporation's influence. The prison's medical director arrived and demanded, "Where's Yi-Hwan?" A guard replied, "He's gone. 3 inmates from the bus are missing. 2 are identified as Kim Sang-chun and T. Chun-ho. A guard saw them leaving with Dr. Na Yi-ji." The director recalled hearing from the head of the how Yi-Hwan had destroyed Dr. Na's career, causing him to lose his license. Surely, Dr. Na wanted Yi-Hwan dead? Director Sun called the eldest son of the T. Kang Corporation's secretary to report the situation. The secretary immediately ordered Director Sun, "You promised Yi-Hwan wouldn't escape prison until the T. Kang board meeting was over. You better keep your word." The secretary then quickly informed Yi-Jun, the eldest son, about the situation. Now, Yi-Jun realized his stepmother was plotting to have her son's sentence postponed. He immediately headed to Heiyun Hospital. Director Sun then received a call from a doctor at Heiyun Hospital, informing him that an emergency patient named Yi-Hwan had just been brought in. Dr. Na appeared and said, "It's me, Director Sun. This young master needs surgery, otherwise he'll die. But Director Sun insisted that Dr. Na leave Hee Yoon Hospital immediately. Then, he told the doctor there, "I'll be there in 10 minutes. Dr. Na continued to speak to Director Sun. Do you think this was a random traffic accident? It was orchestrated so this young master could postpone his sentence. Only the doctor at T. Kang Hospital, and I can operate on him. But if the doctor at T. Kang Hospital performs the surgery, the postponement will definitely be approved. Make your choice." But Director Sun still insisted that Dr. Na leave Hee Yoon Hospital immediately. Young Master Yi Hwan, overhearing this, laughed loudly and said, "You'll never touch my body, you useless incompetent fool." Dr. Na immediately retorted, "I won't touch you until you beg me. You'll be dead before Director Sun gets here. I performed first aid just so you'd make it here alive. But that shard of glass is about to sever your intestines." As Dr. Na walked out, the young master coughed up blood and began to convulse, struggling for breath. At the accident scene, the chairwoman arrived but couldn't find her beloved son. She asked Director Sun, "Where's my son?" Director Sun refused to answer and turned to leave. The chairwoman then said, "You understand who owns T. Kang Hospital now, don't you? Whatever eldest son Yi Jun can give you, I can give you that and more." Director Sun, swayed by her honeyed words, got into the car with the chairwoman and headed to Hee Yoon Hospital. On the way, he hung up on a call from the eldest son's secretary. The secretary then informed Yi Jun, "Our chairwoman is also on her way to Hee Yoon Hospital. It seems Director Sun is with her." Just then, Yi Jun received a call from Dr. Na Yi-ji at Hee Yoon Hospital. Young Master Yi Hwan was fading fast, his vitals plummeting. The doctor ran out to plead with Dr. Na, as the young master's spleen had ruptured. Dr. Na, mid conversation with Yi Jun, abruptly hung up and rushed into the operating room to save the life of T. Kang Group's second son. Before going in, he handed his stethoscope to inmate Kim Sang-chun. Dr. Na entered the operating room and said to the young master, "You're very scared, aren't you? That pregnant woman died. Now you can understand how she felt. Now, will you beg me to save your life?" The young master shed a crocodile tear and then fainted. Numerous guards, armed with guns, entered Hee Yoon Hospital and arrested the 2 inmates who had assisted Dr. Na Yi-ji. Director Sun approached the operating room and demanded of Dr. Na Yi-ji, "Get out here now." The doctor replied, "His spleen is ruptured. If I stop, he'll die." Director Sun ordered the guards, "Go inside and escort Dr. Na out." But the doctor said, "According to the law, if a patient is unconscious and in critical condition, the surgery can proceed with the consent of at least one doctor. Everyone here has consented to my performing the surgery, so I have full authority here. You're distracting me." The chairwoman appeared and said, "The patient's guardian is here. I demand you get out of there." Dr. Na announced, "The patient's guardian has already consented to the surgery." Suddenly, the eldest son appeared and said, "I gave Dr. Na permission to perform the surgery. Mother, I couldn't let your precious son die without surgery, could I?" Later, the chairwoman met privately with her stepson and angrily warned him, "Yi Hwan is your brother by blood. How could you report him for drug use? If you touch him again, I won't let you get away with it." The chairwoman also deliberately instructed Director Sun, "Please take good care of my son." Director Sun hastily explained to the eldest son, "I'm not on her side. Please don't misunderstand." Later, Dr. Na successfully completed the surgery, saving Yi Hwan's life. He went to a private room in the prison to meet with Yi Jun and Director Sun. When Yi Jun asked Dr. Na, "Was it because of my brother that you had your medical license revoked?" Dr. Na replied, "I wanted to give that arrogant young master a taste of prison life for a very long time. I want to be Director Sun's successor. I hope you'll help me." Yi Jun laughed and said, "What's in it for me if I help you?" Dr. Na promised. Within 3 years, Yi Hwan won't be able to step foot outside of prison. Upon hearing this, Yi Jun said, "I think you're very well suited for the position of medical director of the prison." But Director Sun announced, "I've already prepared someone else to succeed me." Yi Jun still decided to help Dr. Na become the new medical director of TSEO prison. Dr. Na returned home, looked at the list of medical staff working at TSEO prison, and resolved to win them all over to his side, overthrowing Director Sun's current authority. 2 weeks later, Lee Yi-hwan recovered and was escorted to the prison to serve his sentence. Dr. Na also arrived to assume his new position as medical director. When Dr. Na Yiji entered, all the inmates cheered him like a hero. Previously, Dr. Na had worked there for 3 months and saved the lives of many critically ill patients. All the doctors and nurses at the prison were eager to see the new director, hoping he would be better than Director Sun. Among them was Dr. Han, a female doctor who had been Dr. Na's colleague 3 years prior at T. Kang Hospital. Director Sun returned to the prison and found Dr. Na treating patients in his director's office. Director Sun angrily warned, "Why are you sitting in the director's chair and treating my patients without permission?" The tension in the room was palpable, and all the staff quickly retreated. Dr. Na Yiji told the former director, "I'm here to succeed you as medical director, which means from today on, all the patients in this prison are mine." Director Sun confidently asserted, "You're only the interim director. I will definitely not let you become my official replacement." That evening, Director Sun was at home when his wife brought him a large cardboard box. She was excited, thinking it was full of bribe money as usual. But when she opened it, she found only documents. Director Sun examined the contents and realized they were outpatient treatment records from Hee-Yoon Hospital for TSEO prison inmates. Just then, he received a call from Dr. Na. The doctor said, "I've studied those outpatient treatment records. They were all sent to Hee-Yoon Hospital for treatment over the past 5 years. You've pocketed billions of won by colluding with that hospital. The chairman of Hee-Yoon Hospital is an acquaintance of yours, isn't he? If these records are submitted to the inspection committee, you'll be in trouble. Please take some time to attend the party to celebrate my appointment as the new medical director." Director Sun asked, "You want me to acknowledge you as my successor in front of all the staff?" Later, Dr. Na announced to everyone at the party, "Director Sun is coming to celebrate with us." Furious, Director Sun had no choice but to drive to the welcoming party. However, as he drove out, Dr. Choi blocked his way. Director Sun asked, "Why didn't you come to interview for the prison medical director position?" Dr. Choi explained, "I was kidnapped by inmate Kim Sang-chun's men for 2 weeks, so I couldn't interview for the medical director position at the prison." Kim Sang-chun was the mastermind behind Yi-hwan's car accident and was also Dr. Na's accomplice. Director Sun called Dr. Na, informing him that he couldn't attend the party. Dr. Choi, who had been considered for the chief medical officer position, suddenly appeared. He claimed he had been kidnapped for 2 weeks. "I'm going to the prison to see Kim Sang-chun and T. Chun-ho. They're the ones who helped you with the prisoner transport van accident. Was Yi-hwan's accident your doing?" Dr. Na Yiji immediately denied it. "I know nothing about that." Director Sun replied, "I'm going to the prison to see Kim Sang-chun and ask him directly." Dr. Na called Madam Oh. "Why did you let Dr. Choi escape?" Madam Oh responded, "Kim Sang-chun's men must have let him go." Dr. Na said, "I'll take care of it," and hung up. At the prison, Dr. Han was still working. She asked a nurse to see a patient's medical records from 3 years prior. The nurse said, "For records that old, you need the director's approval to access them." But when Dr. Han said, "This patient is a high suicide risk," the nurse handed over a key card, saying, "You only have 10 minutes, Dr. Han." Dr. Han entered the records room and searched for her younger brother Hanbit's file, as he had been incarcerated there 3 years earlier. Upon finding it, she recalled visiting Hanbit, only for him to say, "Don't visit me again." Director Sun entered the prison and ordered a guard, "Turn off all the cameras. No one is allowed in here." He then asked a nurse, "Get me 100 units of insulin for a diabetic patient." Observing from inside the records room, Dr. Han wondered, why does Director Sun need so much insulin? While the nurse retrieved the medication, Director Sun took a taser from the nurse's drawer. He noticed someone watching him from inside the records room and went to investigate. The nurse said, "I've got your insulin ready, sir." Director Sun ignored him and continued toward the records room. He then went to Kim Sang-chun's cell, handcuffed him to the bed, and slapped him. "I've given you a comfortable life here, and you betray me?" Director Sun snarled. The inmate replied, "I was just a pawn to help you control the violent inmates. After they were injured, you arranged outpatient treatment for them and received billions in bribes." Director Sun was about to hit Kim Sang-chun again, but Ti-chun-ho intervened. Director Sun tased and then beat him. He then tested Kim Sang-chun's blood sugar. Seeing it was high, he injected him with insulin. "If I give you another dose, you'll have a stroke or be brain dead by morning. If you want to live, tell me how you know Dr. Na Yi-ji." Just then, Dr. Na arrived at the prison. A guard blocked his colleague from opening the door. When Dr. Na explained he needed to check on Kim Sang-chun, the guard said, "The lock is broken. I'll go downstairs and open it for you." The guard turned and walked away incredibly slowly. But Dr. Han opened the door from inside, letting Dr. Na in, much to the guard's surprise. Dr. Han recounted, "Director Sun took 100 units of insulin. But I checked, and all the diabetic patients here have normal levels." Dr. Na responded, "Injecting that much can cause cardiac arrest. Get me the medications to treat that." The guard informed Director Sun, "Dr. Na Yi-ji is on his way to Kim Sang-chun's cell." The director raised the syringe, prepared to inject another dose. When Kim Sang-chun finally confessed, Madam Oh introduced him to me. Director Sun started recording the confession. The guard announced, "Dr. Na will be here in 30 seconds. Director Sun injected the remaining insulin into Kim Sang-chun. When Dr. Na entered, Director Sun said, "I think he overdosed on insulin. Check him." He then saw Dr. Han and the nurse rushing in with emergency medications. Dr. Na started CPR and instructed Dr. Han, "Start enrollment 4. When Kim Sang-chun regained consciousness, Dr. Na said, "He needs to go to the hospital immediately." He then called to the nurse, "Get him onto a stretcher." Dr. Na asked Kim Sang-chun's cellmate, "What did Kim Sang-chun tell Director Sun?" Dr. Han looked suspicious, but helped the nurse get Kim Sang-chun onto the stretcher. Dr. Na confronted Director Sun, who was reviewing security footage showing Dr. Na meeting with Kim Sang-chun months prior. "Resign quietly," Director Sun threatened, "or this footage goes to the Inspector General. You'll be back here as an inmate." Dr. Na countered, "I don't think so. Kim Sang-chun sent me what he took from Hee-Yoon Hospital. It's the investor list. That hospital belongs to your family, doesn't it? A prison medical director sending inmates for treatment at his family's hospital. If I send this to the prosecutor's office, you'll be in worse shape than me." He then showed Director Sun photos of the investor list. Director Sun raced to his family's hospital. He opened his safe, but the investor list was gone. He went to confront Kim Sang-chun, but a guard stopped him. The warden said, "I heard about the insulin overdose. Don't cause any more trouble until the end of your term." Dr. Han, who had overheard everything, confronted Dr. Na. "Did you orchestrate all this to become chief medical officer? You're going to profit from inmates by getting them medical furloughs and building your own empire, aren't you? I know about your medical license being revoked because of Yi H1. Now that you've got him, stop, or I won't let you get away with this." Dr. Na replied, "If I become the king of this prison, you'll get what you want. Your brother is Hanbit, isn't he? I met him in prison until he disappeared. We have a common enemy. Do you think I went through all this trouble just to catch a lowlife like Yi H1? Director Sun reviewed the security footage and saw that on the day Yi H1 was brought to Hee-Yoon Hospital, Kim Sang-chun and Ti-chun-ho had snuck into his office, opened his safe, and photographed the investor list. Director Sun called Dr. Na to arrange a meeting. Director Sun asks, "Dr. Na, did you apply for the medical director position at the prison to punish Han? I'll hand him over to you, as long as you give me the investor list for Hee-Yoon Hospital." Dr. Na replied, "What I want is the list of VIP inmates you have." When Director Sun feigned ignorance about such a list, Dr. Na elaborated. "Blocks 1 through 7 house the common inmates. Blocks 8 and 9 are for the working class inmates, the middle class. The last block, number 10, houses inmates from Keeball families and politicians. They are the VIP members. I want you to hand over those inmates in that special block to me. In return, I'll give you the Hee-Yoon Hospital investor list. Director Sun considered this for a moment and then shook hands, agreeing to Dr. Na's proposed exchange. Just then, Director Sun received a call from Chairwoman Mo Yi-ra. She summoned him to T-Kang Hospital for a meeting. Director Sun excused himself, promising to transfer the VIP inmate block to Dr. Na on another day. At the hospital, the chairwoman asked Director Sun to help postpone her son's sentence for 2 months. Director Sun confidently replied, "I can definitely do that." The chairwoman inquired, "I heard Dr. Na Yi-ji is the medical director at the prison now, is that right?" Director Sun played a recording of inmate Kim Sang-chun's confession, implicating Dr. Na in orchestrating the inmate transport accident. He asserted, "This evidence is enough to remove Dr. Na from his position as medical director." Suddenly, Lawyer Chin, the chairwoman's daughter, appeared and stated, "This can't be used as evidence in court. It was recorded in prison. Prison rules prohibit personal phones, so this evidence will be considered inadmissible. If you submit it, you might even end up in jail yourself." Director Sun then produced a USB drive and said, "This contains a video proving Na Yi-ji visited Kim Sang-chun in prison. The audio is very clear, too. The original is saved on the prison's computer. I copied it onto this USB drive." Lawyer Chin's associate verified that the USB drive indeed contained the video as described. Director Sun then stated his demand. "I want to become the head of the VIP ward at T-Kang Hospital." The chairwoman promised, "I'll give you that position, as long as you bring my Yi-Hwan home safely." Director Sun added one more condition. "If Na produces the Hee-Yoon Hospital investor list during the investigation, give me the original." He then handed the USB drive to Lawyer Chin and left. He walked away cheerfully, chatting and laughing with Dr. Choi, who had recently been unsuccessful in his application for the prison's medical director position. Unexpectedly, Director Sun ran into Yi-jun, the eldest son of the T-Kang group, who was entering. Yi-jun asked, "Weren't you just leaving Chairwoman Mo's office? Are you switching sides and joining forces with her instead of me?" Director Sun replied, "I'm no longer a pawn you need." He then walked away confidently. The eldest son instructed his secretary to investigate Director Sun's dealings with Chairwoman Mo and inform Dr. Na. Observing from above, the chairwoman and her daughter, Lawyer Chin, were pleased with the temporary rift they had created between Director Sun and Yi-jun. As Director Sun left, he received an angry phone call from a chairman. Why was my son returned to prison while his sentence was postponed for dialysis? He threatened to expose Director Sun's 500 million won bribe for arranging the postponement. Director Sun, realizing Dr. Na was behind this, rushed back to the prison. On his way, he bumped into a female cancer patient. Suddenly, several men appeared, addressing her as boss and escorting her back to the hospital. Meanwhile, Chairman Mo's son was brought back to prison. He yelled, demanding to see Director Sun, but Dr. Na walked by silently. Seeing Dr. Na, Yi-Hwan shouted, demanding to see his family. However, a prison guard explained. Due to his violent behavior, attacking a guard and his cellmate, visitation privileges have been temporarily suspended. Dr. Na ordered, "Put him in a cell where he can't hurt anyone." Yi-Hwan was transferred. He acted tough, confronting a cellmate. He then noticed a large snake tattoo on the man's back. The inmate sat up and gestured to 3 large henchmen. Each had a smaller snake tattoo on their backs. The 3 men proceeded to teach the young Keeball a lesson. Back at the prison, Director Sun confronted Dr. Na. "Why did you return Chairman Mo's son when he's on dialysis?" Dr. Na calmly replied, "After an examination, I found he has no kidney disease." Director Sun angrily asked, "Didn't we make a deal?" Dr. Na retorted, "Then why did you meet with Chairwoman Mo? Didn't you promise to hand Yi-Hwan over to me?" Director Sun threatened, "I'll give the video of your meeting with Kim Sang-chun to the inspectors." Dr. Na calmly stated, "My meeting with Kim Sang-chun was 31 days ago, wasn't it? Prison camera footage is automatically deleted after 30 days. Startled, Director Sun immediately called Lawyer Chin, asking her to send the USB drive to the inspectors. Lawyer Chin calmly replied, "I think you're mistaken. You didn't give me anything." Director Sun was devastated. He agreed to hand over the VIP inmate list and Yi H1 to Dr. Na. But Dr. Na had another demand. "From now on, I'm the king of this prison." At Chairwoman Mo's office, she told her daughter, "Na Yiji will become the new medical director. We need leverage over him. Keep that USB drive safe. I'll have someone delete the original file at the prison." The guard then deleted the video of Dr. Na's meeting with Kim Sang-chun. That evening, Dr. Han and Dr. Na had dinner. Dr. Na said, "I want the VIP inmates under Director Sun's control. They're influential businessmen and politicians. I want them on my side, as my knives." Dr. Han replied, "You'll use them to arrange sentence postponements and make money? You're just like Director Sun. I won't join you." Dr. Na calmly responded, "What have you learned in 2 years about your brother's disappearance? You don't even know who Hanbit shared a cell with. Any inmate who wants to see you needs the medical director's approval. If you want to know the truth about your brother, you'll join me." Dr. Han stood up abruptly, declaring, "You're worse than Director Sun." She then left. Dr. Na arrived home to find a stranger inside. As he prepared to confront the intruder, he recognized him as the former director of the emergency department at T. Kang Hospital, his old boss. The former director apologized, explaining he had coerced Dr. Na into signing a falsified medical record for Congressman Young. "I was only following orders," he claimed. 3 years prior, this same director had pressured Dr. Na to sign a document confirming that Congressman Young had stage 3 lung cancer, enabling the congressman to postpone his prison sentence. Dr. Na had refused, as the tests showed Congressman Young only had stage 1 lung cancer. The director had then tried to persuade Dr. Na with various arguments. "With just your signature, Congressman Young's sentence will be postponed. He will become a VIP patient at our hospital. He'll pay T. Kang Hospital hundreds of millions of won each year. Then you'll be free to help poor patients. I heard your mother has a brain tumor, right? Bring her to the hospital, and I'll arrange for a neurosurgeon to operate on her." It was this promise of surgery for his mother's brain cancer that led Dr. Na to sign the falsified document for Congressman Young. However, because of this signature, Dr. Na lost his medical license. T. Kang Hospital subsequently refused to operate on his mother, and she died, leaving her talented son helpless. Now, the former director continued to advise Dr. Na, "Don't be foolish and oppose Director Sun. His family has extremely strong roots. They've held the presidency of the Medical Association for 5 generations. Behind Director Sun is a powerful organization. If you continue, your life will be completely ruined." Dr. Na retorted, "It's because of those people that my mother died. You go tell them I'm going to round them all up and destroy them all at once." This conversation was recorded by a hidden camera planted by Lawyer Chin. She later reported to her mother, the chairwoman, "It's true that Yi H1 made a mistake. But the reason Dr. Na's license was revoked was because he signed the false diagnosis for Congressman Young, and the person he's targeting is Director Sun." The chairwoman said, "We need to help Dr. Na defeat Director Sun. Then he'll help Yi H1 postpone his sentence." The director of the surgical department met with the chairman of Hee Yun Hospital to report, "Na Yiji is very stubborn and won't listen to my advice." The chairman's lawyer interjected, "If that investor list is fully exposed, all of your medical-related businesses will be forced to close. Your family members will also have their licenses revoked." The chairman then addressed Director Sun, "I helped you get the position of medical director at the prison. How can you be so incompetent as to affect our entire family like this? Get that investor list back from Na Yiji immediately." Director Sun drove back to the hospital to review the security footage. He discovered that when Kim Sang-chun retrieved the file, he didn't meet Dr. Na but was immediately apprehended by the police. Kim Sang-chun had only managed to photograph the first 3 pages of the investor list. Previously, Dr. Na had also only shown Director Sun those same 3 photos before snatching his phone back. Director Sun immediately called his older brother, the chairman, and informed him, Na only managed to get the first 3 pages of the investor list. At that moment, Dr. Na arrived at the prison to visit Kim Sang-chun and asked, "Where is the investor list now?" The inmate replied, "It's still in the prison." Dr. Na said, "I'll retrieve it tomorrow." The inmate immediately asked, "When will you approve my stay of execution?" Dr. Na replied, "As soon as I take down Director Sun, I'll push it through." The next morning, Director Sun rushed to the prison to find the investor list file. He checked the security camera footage from the day Kim Sang-chun was brought back from Hee-Yoon Hospital. He saw Kim Sang-chun hand a file to a guard at the property room. The director went to the property room to search Kim Sang-chun's belongings. On his way, he bumped into a guard delivering goods. After checking all of Kim Sang-chun's belongings, he couldn't find the file. He even checked inmate T-Chun Ho's belongings in the central ward, but the list wasn't there either. The guard informed him, "Last night, Mr. Kim Sang-chun requested over the phone to have an item delivered to Dr. Na Yi-ji in the medical ward." Just then, Dr. Na walked into his office and received an express delivery package from Kim Sang-chun. But when he opened it, there was only a note inside that read, "I'll give you the file when I get out of here on a stay of execution." At that moment, Director Sun barged into Dr. Na's office. He saw Kim Sang-chun's package on the desk. Dr. Na then produced an envelope from Hee-Yoon Hospital. After a brief exchange, Director Sun said, "That's not the investor list in that envelope, is it? If you had the real list, you would have sent it to the investigators already. I'd bet my life that it's not in there." Dr. Na replied, "This isn't just about your life, it's about your entire family." Director Sun demanded, "Open it." Dr. Na opened the envelope. Director Sun immediately snatched it and saw that the Hee-Yoon Hospital investor list was indeed inside. Dr. Na took the file back and prepared to fax it to the investigators. Director Sun quickly stopped him and promised absolute obedience to Dr. Na. He then called his brother, the chairman, and informed him, "Yi-ji has the file." This news infuriated the chairman. Dr. Na began assigning duties to the doctors and nurses at the prison. Former Director Sun was assigned to examine inmates in the general ward. Later, Dr. Na called Mrs. O to thank her for sending him the fake investor list to trick Director Sun. Then, Dr. Na received a call from Miss Ki-in. She asked, "Are you the guardian for Kim Sang-chun's daughter?" Meanwhile, Director Sun started examining inmates. A prison boss came in for an examination. He said to Director Sun, "I've been here a long time, but you never looked after me, only Kim Sang-chun. Let me tell you, I have a lot of guys working in receiving. I heard they sent something for Kim Sang-chun, and it could be the end of you." But in reality, the package contained nothing more than a piece of paper. They also used T-Chun Ho's name on the package to mislead you. Director Sun then asked, "So, where was that file sent?" The gang leader demanded the director cooperate with him from now on and gave Director Sun the address where Kim Sang-chun had sent the file. Director Sun immediately ran into Dr. Na's office to find the list of investors he had just been reading, but it was nowhere to be found. He checked the shredder and realized the file Dr. Na had given him had been destroyed. Director Sun gleefully reported the good news to his chairman and drove off to retrieve the file that held the fate of his entire family. At that moment, Dr. Na arrived at the hospital to meet Chairman Mo's wife and daughter. Chairman Mo's wife said, "I know Kim Sang-chun's daughter just received a package sent from the Siechun prison. She's being treated for a brain tumor in this hospital. I'll protect her at all costs. As for you, bring Yi H-won back to me." As Dr. Na stepped outside, he saw Kim Sang-chun's daughter being rushed to the emergency room. He asked a nurse and learned she had just received a video call from someone and then fainted. Dr. Na immediately ran into the patient's room, picked up her phone, and checked the number that had just called. He discovered it was Director Sun. Dr. Na received a call from the prison warden informing him that the Seoul prosecutor's office had just sent someone to arrest Kim Sang-chun. Earlier, police officers had come to the hospital room to arrest Kim Sang-chun for stealing documents from Hee-Yoon Hospital. Director Sun had video called Kim Sang-chun's daughter so she could watch her father's arrest. He then asked, "Where are the documents your father sent you?" Dr. Choi was already waiting to retrieve the documents. He brought the list of He-Yun Hospital investors to Director Sun and informed him that Dr. Na's medical license had been revoked, not for medical malpractice, but for misdiagnosis. Remember Congressman Young, the one you accused of faking lung cancer results to postpone his sentence 3 years ago? You were the one who asked T. Kang Hospital to falsify his medical records. You were also the one who backstabbed him, accused him of faking his illness, and sent him to prison. In reality, the director of the emergency room had made the diagnosis. But Na Yiji was the one who took the fall and had his license revoked, ruining his career. Director Sun said, "So, his initial target was me, not that young Yi H1. I must eliminate him completely." While Dr. Na was driving, a prison guard called to inform him that Kim Sang-chun had just self-harmed and needed immediate medical attention. Upon hearing this, Dr. Na turned his car around and headed back to the prison. Mrs. O called Dr. Na and said, "I heard Director Sun retrieved the list. You've lost again. Don't set foot in that prison. You'll die if you go in there." At that moment, Dr. Na drove past the prison gates. Then, several personnel began closing the prison gates. As Dr. Na entered the prison, he saw the gang leader, who had just cooperated with Director Sun, and many of his followers wielding weapons. Dr. Na ran inside, pursued and cornered from both directions. He fought back, subdued one of them as a shield, and then ran into the medical ward, locking the door. Director Sun sat down to watch Dr. Na's every move through the security cameras. As Dr. Na was walking, inmate T-Chun Ho punched him hard in the stomach, and he was then restrained by several other inmates. From above, Kim Sang-chun emerged and said, "If I give you one of my hands, Warden Sun will set me free. Here are my test results from He-Yun Hospital confirming my bile duct cancer. I can get a stay of execution with this." Dr. Na immediately responded loudly, "I'll get you out right now. If a knife penetrates the right side of your navel, damaging the gastric artery, they'll rush you to the ER. This kind of surgery requires general anesthesia, so you'll definitely be transferred to T. Kang Hospital, not He-Yun. I'll get you a stay of execution so you can see your daughter one last time." Kim Sang-chun hesitated, then said, "I trust you more than Warden Sun anyway. I want you to stab my stomach yourself, so I can see my daughter one last time." Dr. Na then sprayed a fire extinguisher at the surveillance camera. Warden Sun immediately switched to another camera to continue monitoring, so he was aware of Dr. Na's plan. Suddenly, the power to all the surveillance cameras went out. Then, a mysterious hand discreetly turned the camera system back on. Warden Sun stepped outside to find Kim Sang-chun being loaded into an ambulance with a large wound in his stomach. Dr. Na appeared and said, "He was seriously injured by 2 fellow inmates. I have to take him to a higher-level hospital. Looks like your carefully orchestrated mob justice plan didn't work out this time." Warden Sun angrily asked the corrections officer, "Are you against me? Why did you cut the power to the cameras?" But the corrections officer replied, "I was outside watching the drills this whole time. I don't know anything about it." In the ambulance, Kim Sang-chun said to Dr. Na, "I didn't know about my daughter's existence for 16 years. She suddenly came looking for me, then was taken away again, and now she has cancer. Like father, like daughter, she's bearing the brunt of the evil I committed. Please help me see her one last time before she goes." Then, the inmate passed out. Upon arrival at the hospital, Kim Sang-chun was rushed into the emergency room. Just then, Dr. Han approached Dr. Na and said, "If I agree to cooperate with you, I'll find my brother, right?" Dr. Na replied, "At the very least, you'll find out why Hanbit disappeared." After the surgery, Dr. Na told Kim Sang-chun, "Once you recover, I'll help you get a stay of execution. Your daughter will be brought here to see you." Warden Sun suddenly appeared and said to Kim Sang-chun, "Go back to prison tomorrow. I've spoken to your doctor. He said you can be discharged tomorrow." Dr. Choi arrived and said, "I'll start the discharge procedures right away." Warden Sun told Kim Sang-chun, "You'll get out of prison before you die, but I doubt your daughter will last that long." Kim Sang-chun was enraged upon hearing this. At that very moment, a group of inmates was being escorted into the prison. Among them was an arrogant young man named Kim Seok-woo. He was being returned to prison from court. When taunted by a fellow inmate, he attacked, leaving the other inmates seriously injured. Later, the young man was brought to see Dr. Na. The doctor asked, "You tried to get a stay of execution once before, but failed, didn't you?" The arrogant young man said, "You're helping me get a stay of execution, aren't you? Don't half-ass it like Warden's son. If you pull this off, my father will give you a lot of money." Dr. Na asked, "That's it? You assaulted that woman, the victim, and you don't feel any remorse?" The privileged kid scoffed and said, "Why did they have to follow me around? What a bunch of morons." The doctor promptly gave the rich kid a beating. Afterwards, he struggled to retaliate and managed to grab Dr. Na by the throat. But Dr. Han appeared and injected him with a sedative. Guards arrived and began escorting the entitled young man back to his cell. Dr. Han said to Dr. Na, "For a long time, I've wanted to teach Kim Seok-woo a lesson. One of his victims is my patient. Last time, it was me who intervened so his sentence wouldn't be suspended." Not long ago, the kid filed for a stay of execution, claiming serious mental health issues. Kim Seok-woo kept acting crazy and rambling in front of the review board to get the suspension approved. But unfortunately for him, he ran into Dr. Han. She gave him a cognitive assessment. He scored quite high on all tests, showing no signs of any mental illness or antisocial personality disorder. Dr. Han requested a brain MRI for a better understanding. The test results showed no evidence of neurological problems, so he remained in custody. At that time, the young Kim Seok-woo came outside and stared intensely at Dr. Han. He attacked the guard and rushed to try and finish off Dr. Han, but she swiftly threw him to the floor. Right then, Director Sun immediately came to check on Kim Seok-woo and urged him to sue Dr. Na for assaulting a prisoner. But the rich kid said, "I like him. Get that doctor to help me get a suspended sentence. He has to do this for me. Do you understand?" Director Sun went to see Dr. Na. The doctor said, "I've checked it out. All the files for Kim Seok-woo to get a suspended sentence were created at your Hee-Yoon Hospital. If you agree to let Kim Sang-chun stay at T-Kang Hospital to see his daughter one last time, then I'll help that kid get his sentence suspended. Isn't his father the chairman of JH Steel Group? That chairman is also a VIP client of yours." Hearing Dr. Na's reasoning, Director Sun agreed. That evening, Dr. Na received an email from Kim Sang-chun. Because he was able to see his daughter who has a brain tumor, he sent a valuable email to repay the kindness. The email contained medical records of prisoners who had been brought to Hee-Yoon Hospital for treatment. Among them were Han-bit's records, Dr. Han's younger sibling. The doctor immediately forwarded this email to Dr. Han. It contained all the records and prescriptions that Hee-Yoon Hospital had prescribed for Han-bit. At this time, Dr. Han had a therapy session with Yi-jun, the eldest son of the T-Kang group. After the session, Yi-jun realized that Dr. Han seemed to be hiding something. He immediately called his subordinate. "Investigate what has happened to Dr. Han since the last time we met." When Dr. Han was driving home, the chief reported to Yi-jun that Na Yi-ji wants to help the rich kid Kim Seok-woo, the son of the chairman of JH Group, get his sentence suspended. He is exploiting Dr. Han to help him. Dr. Na is now advising the rich kid on how to get a suspended sentence. "You have to have Wilson's bipolar disorder to get out of here." Dr. Na and Director Sun also met with the chairman of JH Group to explain to him how to help his precious son get his sentence suspended. Dr. Na Yi-ji boldly proposed a condition to the chairman. "If I can pull this off, can you give me what you gave Director Sun?" The chairman immediately agreed, as long as it meant getting his son out of prison. Miss Chin visited her spoiled brother in jail. Afterwards, she learned that Dr. Na Yi-ji was working to get the JH Group chairman's son's sentence deferred. She immediately called her mother, the chairwoman, to inform her, and then coldly left. The chairwoman told her daughter, "The chairman of JH Group is a major shareholder in our T-Kang Group. He's also on the executive committee of the VIP ward at T-Kang Hospital. We have to find a way to help Dr. Na get his son's sentence deferred." Soon after, Dr. Na called the chairwoman to request a diagnosis of Wilson's disease for the JH Group chairman's son. The chairwoman agreed without hesitation. Dr. Na also requested to specify which doctors would sign the diagnosis. He then showed Director Sun the fabricated medical documents for Kim Seok-woo and demanded he send them to the prosecutor. Director Sun said, "I'll send it under your name. If anything happens, you're fully responsible." Then, Director Sun ordered the prison guard to send Madam O's visitor log to the prosecutor's office. It's time we expose the 2 sentence deferrals Na Yi-ji pulled off. Just then, Prosecutor Young received Kim Seok-woo's application for a sentence deferral. He was furious that this psychopath was requesting another deferral. But this time, the signature on the decision belonged to Na Yi-ji. Then, a staff member rushed in and announced, "I received a visitor log from when Madam O was in prison. It shows that Dr. Na Yi-ji visited her multiple times." Prosecutor Young realized both sentence deferrals were orchestrated by Dr. Na Yi-ji. Meanwhile, Dr. Na demanded that Kim Seok-woo deteriorate his health to appear as if he had Wilson's disease. The young man agreed. "I'll do anything to get out of this hellhole." So, 3 weeks later, Kim Seok-woo was brought to the hospital for a medical examination, looking utterly ravaged. Upon arrival at T-Kang Hospital, he was met by Dr. Han. Seeing that the inmate brought in was Kim Seok-woo, Dr. Han was shocked and appalled. The young man underwent examination. Dr. Han told Dr. Na, "I performed the examination myself. The results show he only has a personality disorder. No further tests will show him to have Wilson's disease-induced bipolar disorder. No matter what you do, that dangerous inmate won't get his sentence deferred." Dr. Na replied, "I will get his sentence deferred and get him out." Then, the doctor received a call from Madam O. She reproached him. "Why would you risk taking on the JH Group chairman's son's deferral case? If anything goes wrong, your position will be jeopardized." But Dr. Na responded, "You have to enter the tiger's den to catch the tiger." Then he hung up. At that moment, Prosecutor Young stormed into Madam O's office and said, "You have cataracts and a hereditary anemia causing brown spots on your body. These ailments have allowed you to live comfortably here. But it seems you've fully recovered, haven't you? Who was it? Who helped you acquire all these illnesses? Was it Na Yi-ji?" Madam O retorted. "Who is Na Yi-ji?" Prosecutor Young invited Madam O to meet Na Yi-ji, but she excused herself to take a shower and went inside. While in the restroom, Madam O received a call from Dr. Na. The doctor informed her that Prosecutor Young had discovered he was behind both her and Kim Seok-woo's cases. She urged him to stop immediately. Dr. Na replied, "If I wasn't confident I'd win, I wouldn't have gotten involved. I'm hanging up now." Meanwhile, Director Sun confidently told the prison guard, "I'm certain that after today, Dr. Na will be arrested. Even if all the doctors at T-Kang Hospital joined forces, they'd only find that Kim Seok-woo has a personality disorder. After the examination, Na Yi-ji will be leaving this domain for good." Kim Seok-woo had his blood drawn to check his copper levels and liver function. Prior to this, Dr. Na had prescribed a specific diet for him to increase his blood copper levels and administered medication to weaken his liver. Next was an eye exam. During the examination, the doctor discovered a Kayser-Fleischer ring, a brownish gold ring around the cornea, a symptom of Wilson's disease. When asked to hold a ball, Kim Seok-woo couldn't keep a steady grip and subsequently collapsed on the floor, convulsing. Dr. Na remarked, "He's having a neck spasm and heart contractions." Then, he said to Dr. Han, "Don't bother going in there, he'll be fine. I've been witnessing this for 2 weeks now." Dr. Han was puzzled. How could such an aggressive, psychotic individual become so debilitated in just 3 short weeks? At that moment, the eldest son of the T-Kang Group was heading to the supermarket to review security footage of Dr. Han's younger sibling, Hanbit, who had recently shopped there. His subordinate told the store clerk, "Black Kite is buried here, and today is also her death anniversary." The subordinate then received a call informing him that Kim Seok-woo had completed his tests, requiring only a brain MRI, which Dr. Han would oversee. Kim Seok-woo was placed in the MRI machine. Before the scan, he was injected with a contrast agent. The MRI results indicated a general mental instability rather than bipolar disorder. However, Dr. Na continuously presented evidence suggesting Wilson's disease. Dr. Han requested another scan. However, upon injecting the contrast agent for the second MRI, Kim Seok-woo suffered an anaphylactic shock and began convulsing. Dr. Na immediately intervened, administering emergency treatment. Kim Seok-woo's breathing returned to normal, and the MRI was stopped. In Madam O's VIP hospital room, Prosecutor Young showed her a document detailing the times Dr. Na Ye-ji had visited her in prison. Madam O retorted, "Dozens of doctors, lawyers, and investors visit me daily, promising to get me out. How am I supposed to remember who Na Ye-ji is? Instead of sitting here, you should be out looking for evidence." Prosecutor Young then received a call from a subordinate, informing him about Kim Seok-woo's anaphylactic shock during the examination. He immediately left for T-Kang Hospital. At the hospital, Kim Seok-woo was receiving emergency treatment. All of this was part of Dr. Na's plan. Prosecutor Young arrived to find Kim Seok-woo looking frail and gaunt. His subordinate relayed the test results, confirming a diagnosis of Wilson's disease. This would significantly reduce Kim Seok-woo's sentence. Prosecutor Young was furious. Simultaneously, Dr. Na called Director Sun. Kim Seok-woo has been diagnosed with Wilson's disease. Get Kim Sang-chun a stay of execution immediately. Dr. Choi reported that the heir suffered anaphylactic shock during the second MRI. Therefore, they couldn't use the MRI results and couldn't conclude whether or not he had Wilson's disease. Director Sun asked, "The woman Kim Seok-woo assaulted, she's hospitalized here, right? Let her know that Kim Seok-woo is about to be released from prison. And Dr. Han is the one who approved it." Dr. Han confronted Dr. Na, questioning, "Did you know the heir would go into anaphylactic shock if he was injected with the MRI contrast multiple times? If he goes into shock, all the MRI results are voided. You set me up, didn't you? Why are you helping that scumbag? Who are you ultimately targeting here?" Dr. Na replied, "Did you think you could win without getting your hands dirty? That disabled couple and their unborn child were killed by them. They also wouldn't give my mother surgery when she was suffering from a brain tumor. They even tried to kill your brother. I'll go anywhere, even hell, to find them." Dr. Han angrily retorted, "What about the victims Kim Seok-woo harmed? They're living in fear, terrified he'll be released." Dr. Na responded, "Sometimes, you have to give up things that are valuable to you if you want to achieve what you desire. I've given up a lot to find those bastards. Have you given up anything for your brother?" Dr. Na returned home, looked at the photo of the disabled couple and the ultrasound picture of their baby. He recalled how helpless he felt when he couldn't save their family. The image of the deaf mother visiting him in prison 3 years ago flashed through his mind. Even though her son was in prison, she constantly encouraged him and said she believed in him completely. Meanwhile, his younger sister was sobbing because the doctor at T-Kang Hospital had refused to perform the surgery to remove their mother's tumor. Dr. Na also couldn't forget the last time he saw his mother's kind face. Dr. Han returned to her office, where the female patient Kim Seok-woo had assaulted rushed in, angrily demanding, "Is that piece of garbage Kim Seok-woo getting his sentence suspended? While my wounds are still healing, he's being released from prison. Were you the one who examined him? Tell me where he is. I'll finish him off myself. If he's released, I can't live in peace. What if he tortures me like before?" Dr. Han hugged the woman and promised, "That heir will not be released." After escorting the patient back to her room, Dr. Han called Prosecutor Young, informing him, "Tomorrow, I'll re-examine Kim Seok-woo." Dr. Choi, who was observing from outside, then called Director Sun, reporting, "Everything went according to plan." The next day, Dr. Na rushed to T-Kang Hospital. The chairman Kim Seok-woo's father announced that the prosecution requested a re-examination of his son's condition. Dr. Na entered and met Prosecutor Young. The prosecutor demanded, "Leave. We'll have another team of doctors perform the examination because we suspect you misdiagnosed the prisoner. Dr. Han will assist us with the examination this time." From inside, Dr. Han and Kim Seok-woo walked out confidently. He looked directly at Dr. Na. Prosecutor Young warned, "If we find out that you're playing games to help this prisoner get his sentence suspended, we'll throw you in jail immediately." Kim Seok-woo angrily exclaimed, That witch is the one who stopped me from being released last time. He fell down, then suddenly pulled out a knife and stabbed Dr. Han just below the neck. Dr. Na immediately rushed to provide first aid, yelling, "Call a vascular surgeon immediately. We have to save her." They quickly rushed Dr. Han to the emergency room. Dr. Na wanted to go into the operating room with Dr. Han, but the head of the emergency department stopped him, coldly stating, "I told you, you can't fight Director Sun." Just then, the woman who Kim Seok-woo had assaulted ran in. Dr. Na then asked, "Is she like this because of me? Because I went to see her after hearing that Kim Seok-woo had been released." Dr. Na immediately questioned, "Who told you that?" The patient replied, "Last night, a doctor came and told me that Dr. Han colluded with a prison medical director to release Kim Seok-woo." When Dr. Na asked, "What was that doctor's name?" the patient said she didn't know. Just then, Dr. Choi was lurking nearby, so the patient pointed him out and said, "It was that doctor." Dr. Na immediately gave chase, but Dr. Choi had already stepped into the elevator. Prosecutor Dung ordered his subordinate, "Investigate all suspended sentences in the past 3 years and list all the inmates diagnosed by Na Yi-ji." The subordinate reported, "T. Kang Group's eldest son, Yi-jun. It seems Kim Seok-woo's suspended sentence was overturned. This is the list of doctors involved in the young master's diagnosis." Yi-jun remarked, "It looks like this was all Na Yi-ji's plan. All the doctors involved in Kim Seok-woo's diagnosis are the same ones who signed the false diagnosis that Director Sun used to imprison Congressman Young. Na Yi-ji knew Director Sun would use Prosecutor Young's involvement in this, but it was all a trap Na Yi-ji set to expose the truth. Director Sun himself had been making numerous false medical diagnoses for a long time. He's more dangerous than we thought." Dr. Na drove back to the prison, went straight to Director Sun's office, and declared, "Do you know why I will defeat you? You always use others' hands to get blood on them for your victories, while I get blood on my own hands. Today, when the blood of the person I had to protect splattered on my face, I made up my mind, I cannot lose." Director Sun retorted, "Are you dreaming? You falsified medical records to help a dangerous psychopath out of prison. The prosecutor's office is investigating. You'll lose everything, and I'll remain the king of this place forever." Walking out, Dr. Na saw a vehicle transporting inmates to the prison. He remembered 3 years prior, when he was first brought to the prison alongside Han Bit, Dr. Han's younger brother. During the intake examination, an inmate, desperate to show a guard his injury, suffered severe blood loss. The prison doctors were all away on assignment, so Dr. Na stepped forward and introduced himself. "I used to be a doctor in the emergency room." He received assistance from Han Bit to provide first aid for the inmate's gastric artery wound. Dr. Na urged, "He needs to be taken to the hospital immediately." But there was no ambulance at the prison. Pharmacist Bok rushed out to assess the situation. Upon learning of Dr. Na's experience, she pleaded, "Dr. Na, please save him. He's my brother. I'll take full responsibility for anything that happens." Dr. Na performed surgery to stop the bleeding before the inmate was taken to the hospital. An ambulance eventually arrived to transport him. Because of this action, the warden allowed Dr. Na to stay in the prison's medical ward and requested, "Doctor, if there's any emergency, please help. We have many critical patients here." At that time, Dr. Na shared a cell with Han Bit. He asked his cellmate, "You seemed pretty skilled back there." Han Bit replied, "My sister's a doctor, so she often used me for practice when she was in medical school. She works at T. Kang Hospital. She's Dr. Han in the psychiatry department." They shook hands and introduced themselves. Pharmacist Bok came to thank Dr. Na. "Thanks to your quick action, my brother is stable now." She gave him a bag of medicine for protection. From that point on, the pharmacist became Dr. Na's ally. She was also the one who cut the power to the security cameras the night Director Sun framed Dr. Na. When Dr. Na returned to the cell, Han Bit had already packed his belongings for transfer. He said, "I'm going to the prison's special ward. I came here only to see someone. If you get out before me, don't tell my sister about this." Afterward, Han Bit bowed to Warden Sun. The next day, Dr. Na saw Han Bit again, but his face was haggard, and he seemed to be afraid of something. Then, a guard announced a visitor for Hanbit. Dr. Na looked down and saw Dr. Han entering the prison. One day, while examining inmates, a staff member ran to Dr. Na. "Doctor, please check on a patient. It's an emergency." Dr. Na rushed over to find Hanbit convulsing. The staff member explained. Warden Sun gave him some medicine, but no one knows what it is. Hanbit showed Dr. Na the pill he'd taken. The doctor ordered the staff member, "Go ask the pharmacist what this is and get the antidote immediately." Hanbit instructed Dr. Na, "If anything unfortunate happens to me, please don't tell my sister. I might not survive after leaving here. Someone wants me released early and asked Warden Sun to force me to take that pill." Hanbit whispered the name of the person who wanted him out into Dr. Na's ear. He continued, "He's a dangerous man. Don't tell my sister, or she'll be in danger too. If I die, please meet with Congressman Young and tell him." Before he could finish, another seizure racked his body. As Dr. Na prepared to inject Hanbit with emergency medication, Warden Sun entered with several guards. The head of the emergency department then informed Dr. Na. "Dr. Han's condition has stabilized." He then warned Dr. Na, "Don't antagonize Warden Sun. It will not only harm you, but also those around you." Dr. Na retorted, "I won't stop. When I catch them all, you'll fall too." Later, Dr. Na visited Dr. Han, who said, "I'm grateful that Kim Seok-woo attacked me. It prevented him from postponing his sentence. If he were free, many more people would end up in hospital beds." Dr. Na replied, "Because of you, Kim Sang-chun missed his last chance to say goodbye to his daughter, and I might lose my chance to become the next medical director of this prison. If you don't trust my methods, let's end our collaboration here." Dr. Na walked out, followed by Dr. Han. Suddenly, the chairman of JH Corporation slapped Dr. Na hard because his son was now severely disabled yet couldn't postpone his sentence. Dr. Na responded, "Is that my fault? Wilson's disease was enough for his release, but he attacked the psychiatrist, and that's why he's in this situation. I could be summoned by the prosecutor's office. When things settle down, I'll take him to a psychiatric hospital for treatment." As Dr. Na left, Chairwoman Mo told the chairman, "The one who sabotaged your son's case and prompted the prosecutor's office to re-evaluate his medical records is Warden Sun." The chairman left upon hearing this. Chairwoman Mo then told Dr. Na, "From now on, we're in the same boat. If you need anything, just tell me." Dr. Na requested, "Chairwoman, please just take good care of Dr. Han." The young heiress asked, "What about my brother?" Dr. Na immediately called the prison and ordered, "Transfer Yi H1 to the medical ward immediately, and tell pharmacist Bok to come see me." In prison, Lee H1, while cleaning toilets, received the news of his transfer. He yelled at the bullies who had tormented him before being escorted by guards to the prison's luxurious medical ward. Director Sun went to see Yi Jun. He presented Kim Seok-woo's medical records indicating Wilson's disease and said, "Chairman herself approved this diagnosis for the young master. She's joined forces with Na Yi-ji to bring Chairman JH of the JH Group over to her side. The prosecution will be investigating soon. You should abandon Na Yi-ji. You need to help Dr. Choi succeed me as medical director at the prison. Then, that punk Lee H1 won't be able to get out of jail. He won't be able to challenge you for the group's inheritance at the upcoming board meeting." Yi Jun asked, "If Chairman JH finds out you used his son to take down Na Yi-ji, will he let you get away with it?" Director Sun smirked. "I recorded the conversation between him and Na Yi-ji when they were discussing the plan to postpone Kim Seok-woo's sentence. Earlier, Sun had secretly started the recording when he and Dr. Na went to see the chairman. Meanwhile, Dr. Na brought pharmacist Bok and inmate Kim Sang-chun to Madam O's office. The four of them were devising a plan to expose Director Sun's wrongdoings. Pharmacist Bok said, "Director Sun has been using vitamins and flour to replace a large quantity of medication meant for the inmates. He resells these expensive drugs and pockets hundreds of millions of won every year." Dr. Na added, "We need evidence that proves they've been repackaging and reselling these drugs. Tomorrow, the medication will be delivered to the prison. This is our chance." Just then, Prosecutor Young arrived with several officers and requested to see Madam O. As Prosecutor Young barged in, Madam O and Dr. Na stepped out. He immediately invited both of them to the prosecutor's office for questioning. After they were taken away, Prosecutor Young searched Madam O's office and discovered a whiteboard with a diagram outlining Director Sun's scheme for smuggling medication out of the prison. Miss O and Dr. Na walked out with the prosecutors to find Pharmacist Bak and Kim Sang-chun already waiting in the lobby of T. Kang Hospital. But a warden from the prison arrived at the hospital and told Kim Sang-chun, "You're being recalled to the prison." Kim Sang-chun pleaded, "Just let me see my daughter one more time," but the prison guards started using force to apprehend him. Meanwhile, Pharmacist Bak went outside. Dr. Choi called Director Sun to inform him of the situation. Director Sun gleefully told Yi Jun, the eldest son, "Na Yi-ji and Miss O have been taken into custody by the prosecution. Our hunt was a resounding success." Yi Jun poured himself a beer and celebrated. Director Sun was set to become the head of the VIP ward at T. Kang Hospital. Yi Jun returned to the company where his subordinate confirmed that Prosecutor Young had arrested Dr. Na Yi-ji and Miss O. Yi Jun mused, "Was Dr. Na not as skilled as I thought? Couldn't he eliminate Director Sun?" Yi Jun ordered his secretary to find Hanbit at all costs before the board meeting. Director Sun went back to the prison to work and ordered his close guard to keep smuggling drugs out as usual. At this time, Pharmacist Bak was also outside, at the prosecutor's office. Now, the prosecutor was interrogating Miss O. Miss O argued, "Don't you know I have hereditary anemia? I've been here for 10.5 hours. Only the police have the authority to detain me that long." Then, Miss O feigned dizziness, a headache, and vertigo before collapsing onto the table. Just then, Miss O's lawyer arrived to take her home. Meanwhile, Prosecutor Young interrogated Dr. Na Yi-ji. The prosecutor asked, "Did you mastermind the falsification of medical records to get Miss O a suspended sentence?" Dr. Na retorted, "Didn't you approve that suspension of sentence yourself? Why don't you question the person who wrote Miss O's medical report and Kim Seok-woo? I investigated who actually wrote those medical records." Unexpectedly, Miss Yi in a phalanx of lawyers into the room and declared, "We are the legal team representing Dr. Na." Prosecutor Young said, "I can't release him because a witness has agreed to testify that Dr. Na conspired to get Kim Seok-woo a suspended sentence, and that is Dr. Han." The prosecutor continued, "Let's hear Dr. Han's testimony first, and then decide whether to release or prosecute Dr. Na." After that, Prosecutor Young led Dr. Han to the interrogation room. The prosecutor asked, "Did Na Yi-ji intentionally inject medication to cause anaphylactic shock in Kim Seok-woo so that the MRI results would be invalidated, Dr. Han?" After a moment's thought, Dr. Han answered, "No, all patients are required to receive that injection before an MRI. It was my decision and Dr. Na's." The prosecutor was shocked and deflated. As they walked out, Dr. Na thanked Dr. Han. She requested, "Let me know as soon as you have any information about my brother." Earlier, the woman who had been abused by Kim Seok-woo visited Dr. Han to express her gratitude because Kim Seok-woo was in the ICU. His liver was almost completely damaged, so he couldn't do those crazy things for the rest of his life. And earlier, before entering the interrogation room, Dr. Na had informed Dr. Han that before Hanbit went missing, he had visited Assemblyman Young in the special section of the prison. It was said that he was about to be transferred to the West Seoul Detention Center. If the Assemblyman arrived and I wasn't at the prison, you wouldn't know the reason why Hanbit disappeared. The prosecutor informed Prosecutor Young about the medical diagnosis of Madam O and Kim Seok-woo, endorsed by a group of doctors at T. Kang Hospital. And, coincidentally, 3 years ago, Assemblyman Young's false medical records were also endorsed by the same group of doctors. Over the past 3 years, this group of doctors had signed diagnoses for numerous inmates who received suspended sentences at TSEO prison. Prosecutor Young realized that Director Sun was the mastermind behind many of these suspended sentences. So, for 3 years, he wanted us to expose Director Sun's illegal drug trafficking operation all along. At that moment, at the prison, the drugs that Director Sun wanted to smuggle out were being loaded onto a garbage truck. Pharmacist Bak informed Dr. Na that the truck being loaded had license plate number 2354. Dr. Na immediately called Madame O, who was waiting in ambush outside the prison. She also saw the garbage truck with the number 2354 and started following it. Then, she saw the garbage truck driver placing the bags of drugs on the side of the road. Warden Ham drove up in a car and took the drugs into his vehicle. All of this was photographed by Madame O's assistant. Madame O followed the car to a nursing home. They proceeded to take the drugs inside and replace the labels. Madame O went inside and saw people repackaging the drugs. Her assistant pretended to have a seizure to distract the people there. Madame O went inside and took pictures of the relabeling process. Afterward, she informed Dr. Na that the mission was complete. Chairwoman Mo Yira then called a police chief to ask for assistance. Suddenly, many police officers raided the nursing home to catch them in the act of relabeling the drugs that had been smuggled from the prison. Warden Ham, a close associate of Director Sun, quickly ran outside, but was then hit hard by a car, flipping several times on the road. At this time, many inspectors also entered the prison to arrest Director Sun for violating medical laws. The inspector then handed the phone to Director Sun to speak to his close prison guard. The guard said, "Save me, boss, I've been arrested." Just then, Dr. Na came and admitted to Director Sun, "I'm the one who reported you. I told you I would show you how I would defeat you." Director Sun said, "You think you can defeat me with just one thing? What about this girl?" Dr. Na confidently declared, "I have many other things waiting for you." Director Sun was escorted outside and saw inmate Kim Sang-chun looking very pleased. Then, he was also escorted to the police station. Dr. Han came to the prison to continue providing psychological treatment to patients at the prison, and then went into the room to meet Dr. Na. She asked, "Did you deliberately damage Kim Seok-woo's health? I want to work with you again." Dr. Na said, "I refuse this request because you might be in danger like before. But I want to ask you something. Can you guarantee that you won't suspect me no matter what I do, even if I'm the one who made Hanbit disappear?" Dr. Han replied, "If you really did that, I know you'd bring him back to me. If I didn't trust you, I wouldn't be here." Director Sun was taken to the Ministry of Justice for questioning. The investigator presented evidence proving that Director Sun, along with Warden Ham, embezzled expensive medications that the government had supplied to the prison. There were also thousands of letters from inmates in the prison alleging that the medicine they were receiving was counterfeit. Prior to this, inmate Kim Sang-chun had instructed all inmates at the prison to write letters denouncing Director Sun. The investigator then presented a photograph proving that Warden Ham had repackaged the medications at a pharmacy. Director Sun immediately begged to make a phone call. He called his older brother, his boss, for help. After that, Director Sun was brought to see his wife and his older brother, who was his boss. Director Sun said that they only knew about the fact that they were diverting the real medication from the prison to the nursing home. The chairman immediately ordered that ownership of the nursing home be transferred to the current manager and that he take all the blame. The lawyer reported that Warden Ham would only have 3 months' salary docked. "I investigated and discovered that Na Yiji used to work at our nursing home, which is why he knew that we were connected to the nursing home." In Director Sun's office, inmate Ti-chun Ho proceeded to open Director Sun's safe. Dr. Na checked and found a hard drive inside. He plugged the hard drive into a computer, then copied a file containing a list of VIP inmates in the prison onto a USB drive and gave it to Dr. Han for analysis. Because Director Sun would be released tomorrow, she needed to analyze the psychological state of these VIP inmates tomorrow. As Dr. Han walked out, Dr. Na saw a treatment file labeled Hanbit. He clicked on it and saw that it contained video recordings of Dr. Han's psychological treatment sessions with her younger brother. However, there was one video without Dr. Han, but instead of another person. The next day, Director Sun was released. He immediately called Warden Ham and learned that at the prison, everyone was rapidly preparing for Na Yiji's inauguration ceremony as the new medical director. Afterward, Dr. Na stepped onto the podium to accept the position of medical director in front of all the prison staff. Director Sun entered his office, opened the safe, and wondered, didn't Na Yiji touch the safe? But he remembered that his important hard drive had its orientation changed. It wasn't the same as before, so he knew that Na had accessed the hard drive. Director Sun went to the special section of the prison to meet Director Anan, a former director at the National Intelligence Service. Director Sun said, "My successor is very eager to take over this special area, so please stop him for a few days. In 2 days, your son will be going abroad. I will make it possible for you to see him." Director An asked, "Isn't the new medical director the one who helped Madam O get her sentence suspended? Do you think this is the first time he's done something like this? He must have done this many times before to get Madam O out so easily and smoothly. I heard that the prison in Ansan also had some cases of suspended sentences like that." Director Sun immediately went to the prison to investigate. Then, he encountered Yi Jun, the eldest son, who was also on his way to the same prison. Yi Jun said, "I'm here to attend the inauguration ceremony for the new medical director at the prison." Afterwards, he went inside to talk to Dr. Na. Yi Jun asked Dr. Na, "Why did Yi and Sen T Kang Hospital's legal team to help you?" Dr. Na replied, "I was also surprised when they showed up. They offered me their assistance, but I was worried they'd use it as an excuse to force me to do something big. So, I transferred Yi H1 to a different cell as a thank you." Yi Jun appeared extremely suspicious, but then he pulled out an envelope to congratulate Dr. Na on his promotion to medical director. Dr. Na bowed in thanks, feigning sincerity. On the other side, Dr. Han spent the entire night researching the medical conditions of all the inmates in the special ward. Afterwards, Dr. Han informed Dr. Na that all of them were suffering from mild depression and claustrophobia, but none of them qualified to be in the prison's special ward. In return, Dr. Na gave her a USB drive containing all the video therapy data Dr. Han had done for her younger brother. Dr. Na led the medical team to the special ward for an inspection. Upon entering, they saw that it was like a miniature amusement park. Dr. Na introduced himself as the new medical director of the prison and stated that he would be conducting a general checkup on all the inmates in the special ward. However, the patients there showed resistance. An inmate with a history of substance abuse approached and protested Dr. Na's general checkup of the patients there. Dr. Na immediately grabbed him by the collar and discovered that he was still using narcotics even while incarcerated. After searching the inmate's cell, pharmacist Bach discovered a bag of illicit drugs. Warden O immediately ordered a search of the remaining inmates' cells in the special ward. Suddenly, Warden N appeared and intervened. Warden O showed deference to Warden N. He started quoting the law to Dr. Na. "Are you trying to take over the special ward to profit from the inmates here? According to the law, you are violating the rights of the inmates. I need to see a lawyer to report you." Dr. Na, upon hearing this, could only remain silent. At this time, Director Sun also arrived at Ansan prison for an investigation. The prison administrator recounted that wherever Na Yiji went, the prison became chaotic. Because 100% of the inmates Na Yiji consulted with were approved for suspension of sentence. No one knows how he does it, but during the examinations, the inmates appear to be on the verge of death. But after they are released, they are completely healthy. He's been to almost every prison in the area and successfully pulled off dozens of sentence suspensions in the last 3 years. However, sometimes people have died because of his sentence suspension recommendations. They died from hepatic coma or aggravated hereditary diseases. Director Sun called Dr. Choi to inquire about Kim Seok-woo, the young master's medical condition. The young master is in intensive care and needs a liver transplant within the next 3 months, or he will die from hepatic coma. Director Sun immediately requested Dr. Choi to investigate the cause of this substance to learn more. He seemed pleased with himself for finding another of Na's weaknesses. Director Sun went to the prison and ordered Warden O, "Do something for me. Otherwise, all the secrets about the bribes you've been taking for years will be revealed. I need you to access the prison's database and find the visitation list with the name Na Yiji. Have that correctional officer also log into the data software and search for the patients Na Yiji has visited in the past 3 years. Later, it was discovered that Na Yiji had made 168 visits to 34 different prisons. Of those he visited, all of them requested a postponement of their sentences, except for 2, Kim Sang-chun and Congressman Young. Aside from those 2, the remaining 32 had their requests for sentence postponements approved. Just then, Dr. Choi called Director Sun to report that 2 people had died after being granted sentence postponements by Na Yi-ji. One died from hepatic coma, like Kim Seok-woo, and the other died from genetic Fanconi anemia, just like Oh's wife. Director Sun then ordered the warden, "Print out the list of 34 people Na Yi-ji visited for me." After receiving the list, he warned the warden, "Don't breathe a word of this to Na Yi-ji, understand?" Meanwhile, Dr. Na Yi-ji was researching the background of Director and of the intelligence agency. After that, the doctor grabbed an injection and went to see him. Dr. Na entered Director An's prison cell, gently sat down beside him, and said, "I want to control the VIP section of the prison, but you keep getting in the way. This forces me to give you an injection to get you out of here." Director An was taken away in an ambulance to the hospital. Dr. Na said, "I injected you with something to induce variant angina. Put this pill under your tongue, and the pain should gradually subside in 5 minutes." Director An asked, "Why are you doing this to me?" Dr. Na Yi-ji replied, "You need to see your son first. Then I'll tell you the reason." Dr. Na called in a favor to Mrs. Oh to help him contact Director An's son. At that moment, Prosecutor Young broke into Mrs. Oh's VIP hospital room to continue investigating Na Yi-ji's scheme to fabricate cases for sentence postponements. Mrs. Oh said, "I'm feeling very sleepy," then invited Prosecutor Young. "Would you like to come to bed and sleep with me?" causing the prosecutor to blush fiercely. Dr. Na escorted Director An to T. Kang Hospital for emergency treatment, where Chairman Mo Yi-ra and her daughter personally welcomed them. Director Sun took the list of prisoners for whom Na Yi-ji had prepared sentence postponement documents to show the eldest son, Yi-jun. 32 people applied and were approved, while 2 were rejected because they had died before their applications could be processed. "If we can prove he killed people by faking their illnesses, he's done for." The eldest son asked, "Why do I need to hear this?" Director Sun said, "Na Yi-ji once visited Congressman Young. He might know who brought down Congressman Young with a fake medical diagnosis. It wasn't me, it was you." At that moment, Dr. Na was sitting and talking with Chairman Mo Yi-ra and her daughter. The chairman said, "I'm very happy that my Lee Yi-hwan was transferred to the medical ward, but I only have 2 months to prepare for the upcoming shareholders meeting. What can I do for you to agree to release Lee Yi-hwan?" Dr. Na said, "Could you buy a dialysis machine for the medical ward? You know that Congressman Young is a close friend of Chairman Lee, your husband, who went to prison because his fake medical diagnosis was exposed. I want him transferred to our prison. I'll release Yi-hwan when I find the person who exposed that fake diagnosis and tried to frame me, too." The chairman immediately asked, "Is the reason you came to the prison to catch the mastermind behind Director Sun?" Right then, Dr. Han was also watching the therapy session video she had previously conducted with Hanbit from the USB drive that Dr. Na had just given her. Suddenly, Dr. Han saw Yi-jun's name appear in the video, causing the younger Hanbit to become deathly pale with fear. The eldest son Yi-jun said to Hanbit, "Do you think you can escape from me?" Dr. Han was completely shocked after watching the video. Unexpectedly, Yi-jun entered Dr. Han's office and asked her what she was watching so intently. "Let me listen," he said, immediately grabbing Dr. Han's headphones. The doctor quickly clicked to switch to another psychotherapy video and said, "I'm in the middle of a therapy session with my patient. I hope you understand." At that moment, Director An was also being moved out of the emergency room. Afterwards, Dr. Na allowed him to meet his biological son, which deeply moved Director An. The young Mistress Yi-in said to Dr. Na, "I just saw Yi-jun walk into Dr. Han's office." Dr. Na immediately rushed to Dr. Han's office. Dr. Na intentionally appeared to cut off Yi-jun's conversation with Dr. Han, then took the eldest son outside to talk. Suddenly, Yi-jun abruptly turned back and said to Dr. Han, "I'm the kind of person who can't suppress my curiosity. We should schedule a therapy session soon." And above the area where Dr. Han was sitting, there was a listening device that the young Mistress Chin had secretly had installed. Yi-jun now asked Dr. Na, "Wasn't your initial target Yi-hwan, but rather Director Sun? But it seems he's not your ultimate target either. Could it be me? You know that Senator Young and I are rivals. Why have you visited him at least 3 times? Dr. Na explained, "I happened to find out that Director Sun has been involved in a lot of corruption. Recently, he was even arrested for swapping fake medications. I once told him, I want to change the rules of the prison, but he warned me, do you want to end up like Senator Young? That's why I went to see Senator Young to ask what happened that Director Sun put him in prison. But the first and second times, he refused to say anything. During the third visit, Director Sun took action so that I could no longer meet with Senator Young. So, I haven't been able to ask him anything. Director Sun is a very dangerous man. You should be careful. As Yi Jun walked away, Dr. Na bowed his head and handed him an envelope containing a list of inmates in the special ward. There are many people you know in here. If you want anyone to be released, just let me know. Yi Jun walked away and said to his secretary, I don't know if Director Sun is a slippery character or if Na Yiji is incredibly clever. But what exactly was Dr. Han watching that she was so startled when she saw me? A moment later, someone entered the office and took Dr. Han's laptop. While the doctor was walking back to her office, the power suddenly went out completely. Unexpectedly, someone ran out of the office and bumped into Dr. Han forcefully. Dr. Han rushed into the office and found that her laptop was gone, so she immediately took the elevator downstairs to check the surveillance camera system. But when she arrived, she ran into Chairwoman Mo. The chairwoman said, I heard there was a power outage on the 7th floor, so I was just taking a look around. Then, she walked away. Dr. Han requested to review the camera footage, but the staff member said that the cameras on the 7th floor had stopped working during the power outage. Miss Yi said to her mother, Chairwoman Mo, I couldn't get Hanbit's footage because someone had already taken Dr. Han's computer when I broke into the office. Then, Warden O from the prison entered. Miss Yi said, maybe my mother and I chose the wrong side. The warden recounted that Dr. Na had killed 2 people by creating false medical records to postpone their executions. Just then, Director Sun also arrived to report to Prosecutor Young. Na Yiji had helped 32 inmates postpone their executions, but 2 of them had died. One had Fanconi anemia, like Madame O, and the other had hepatic coma, like young Master Kim Seok-woo. After the tip-off, Director Sun left. Eldest son Yi Jun, while reviewing the data on Dr. Han's laptop, only found treatment videos that she had made for her patients and nothing suspicious. The eldest son also saw his own medical record on the computer and learned that he had anemia, so he was very worried about developing Alzheimer's like his father, the chairman. Prosecutor Young went to see Madame O and said to her, Did Na help you fake Fanconi anemia? Do you know that Na used that person as a guinea pig for you? Dr. Han informed Dr. Na that her computer had been stolen, including eldest son Yi Jun's medical records. As for Hanbit's video, I copied it to a USB drive and deleted it from the computer. But I ran into Chairwoman Mo in the surveillance room. Dr. Na insisted that she wasn't the one who took the laptop. Then, the doctor received a call from Madame O. She asked, Dr. Na, was I almost killed while faking Fanconi anemia? Come see me right away. When Dr. Na arrived to see Madame O, Prosecutor Young burst in and said, In just 3 years, you've postponed the executions of 32 people, and 2 of them have died, haven't they? Last night, Director Sun gave me the death certificates of those 2 people. Did you use that patient as an experiment to fake Fanconi anemia for Madame O? Dr. Na immediately retorted, The cause of death listed here is leukemia, but that patient didn't receive proper treatment for their pre-existing Fanconi's anemia, which led to the development of leukemia and ultimately death. You should have gone directly to the hospital that diagnosed the patient with Fanconi anemia and asked why they died so quickly from leukemia. I've heard that many doctors these days are falsifying illnesses to collect insurance money. Just then, Director Sun, along with his lawyer, were driving to the home of the deceased patient who had passed away because Dr. Na had used Fanconi anemia to delay his sentence. They intended to persuade the family to sue Na Yiji. But upon meeting the patient's wife and son, they were met with this, You already took half of the insurance money my father left behind last time. He Yun Hospital wrote the conclusion that my father died of leukemia and then took another half as hospital fees. They're nothing but daylight robbers. Director Sun was utterly shocked by this news. He immediately drove back to his He Yun Hospital to investigate. His sister told him that patient B-Letter 1 AFC received insurance benefits from our hospital 3 years ago. He was transferred from Ansan prison with Fanconi anemia. We diagnosed him with leukemia so he could receive a large insurance payout, and the hospital took half of that money back. And the inmate who died from liver failure due to Wilson's disease was also diagnosed by our very own hospital. Meanwhile, Director N was being escorted back to prison. He peered out the window, wanting to see his son one more time. In the car, Director N thanked Dr. Na for administering the injection that allowed him to see his son one last time before the boy was taken abroad. Director N vowed to help Dr. Na and side with him. The doctor replied, "I want to bring down Director Sun and his Hee Yoon hospital." Back at the hospital, Director Sun was being berated by his older brother, the chairman, for digging into the cases of 2 deceased patients who had received insurance benefits through their family's hospital. Sun explained, "The death certificates for those 2 were issued by another hospital, so I wasn't aware." The chairman then slapped him hard across the face and ordered, "Stop Na Yi-ji, now." At the prosecutor's office, the prosecutor informed Prosecutor Young that all the medical records for those 2 patients were approved by Hee Yoon Hospital, but their death certificates were issued by a nearby hospital. They were transferred to the other hospital in their final stages, and Na was the one who transferred them and paid their medical bills. What's more, Hee Yoon Hospital has a reputation for embezzling insurance money from patients treated there by creating fake medical records for them. Prosecutor Young then remembered Dr. Na telling him about doctors falsifying medical records to collect insurance money. Prosecutor Young ordered his staff, "Investigate all suspected insurance fraud cases at Hee Yoon Hospital immediately." Suddenly, Prosecutor Young received a call from the chief prosecutor and was summoned to a Japanese restaurant to meet him. When he arrived, he saw Director Sun and his older brother, the chairman, already waiting there. Dejected, Prosecutor Young returned to his office, where his staff informed him, "I've investigated and discovered that Hee Yoon Hospital has partnered with several other prisons to provide outpatient treatment for a large number of inmates and collect insurance money from them. This could be the largest insurance fraud case in history that the prosecutor's office has ever broken." Prosecutor Young then said, "The chief prosecutor has asked us to drop the matter." Prosecutor Young then called Yi Jun to get his opinion. It seemed like Na's promotion to medical director of the prison was due to Yi Jun's help. "Now I have 2 targets. The first target is Director Sun, and the second is Na. Director Sun is being protected by the chief prosecutor. If I expose Director Sun's crimes, I'll be breaking up the biggest insurance fraud case in the prosecution's history. But if I arrest Na, I'm afraid I'll be going after someone you're protecting, Yi Jun." He immediately ordered him to arrest Nan, but then Prosecutor Young called Dr. Ne and asked him to cooperate, because the prosecutor wanted to expose Hee Yoon Hospital's massive insurance fraud. Afterwards, Dr. Na sent the prosecutor a list of all the inmates who had received outpatient treatment at Hee Yoon Hospital. Prosecutor Young told his staff, "If we uncover this, I'll be appointed deputy chief prosecutor. Use this list to get an emergency arrest warrant for Director Sun's family right away." Prosecutor Young called Dr. Na to borrow prison medical staff and asked them to come to Hee Yoon Hospital tomorrow. Later, Dr. Na went to Director N's prison cell to ask for his help. The next morning, Prosecutor Young led a large group of police officers and Dr. Na Yi-ji to Hee Yoon Hospital to conduct a search. The medical staff from the prison began to check who the fake patients were at the hospital and who Hee Yoon Hospital was covering up to collect insurance money. Indeed, there were many patients who were completely healthy but pretended to be seriously ill in the hospital. At this time, Director N also mobilized all the inmates in the special section to launch a full-scale attack on online platforms to expose the insurance fraud that Hee Yoon Hospital had colluded with outpatient prisoners to create. Dr. Na also mobilized many reporters and journalists to work at Hee Yoon Hospital so that those in positions of power could no longer cover up for the members of the director's family. "Those who don't have power or protection like us must unite to fight together." His sister called to inform Director Sun that their family's hospital was being searched by the police. Then, the prosecutors also entered and arrested her for insurance fraud. Director Sun then called his older brother, the chairman, to report the news. Then the police raided his office and arrested him for insurance fraud. Director Sun was planning to go to Hee Yoon Hospital, but his wife stopped him. However, as soon as he stepped out the door, the police arrived and handcuffed him so that he could be reunited with other family members in prison. Later, Prosecutor Young also announced to the press that Hee Yoon Hospital had created fake diagnoses for many inmates in various prisons to embezzle insurance money from them. This was considered the largest insurance fraud case that the prosecutor's office had ever broken. The medical staff and director and gang inmates were all very excited when they saw this news. Chairman Mo Yi-ra and her socialite daughter watched the news and lavishly praised Na Yi-ji, knowing they had chosen the right person to defeat the eldest son, Yi-jun. Dr. Na visited Director Sun in prison. He asked, "Did you take the hard drive from my safe when I was arrested by the inspection team for the real medication being leaked? It contains Han-bit's treatment records. If Yi-jun finds out, he'll eliminate you immediately." Dr. Na replied, "So, you were keeping that video evidence to try to get leverage over Yi-jun, right? If he knew I actually had that video, I think he'd get rid of you first. Now, you'll do as I say, or you'll die at the hands of Yi-jun. You're going to hand over Hee Yoon Hospital to me. All the members of your family have already agreed to sign the transfer documents. This hospital might be precious to you, but not to them, because they have things that are far more valuable, so they want to get rid of this garbage to lighten their sentences. If you refuse, then you can stay here and take the fall for them. I think you're looking at 10 years in prison." Director Sun listened and agreed to sign over Hee Yoon Hospital to Dr. Na. After Director Sun signed, Dr. Na said, "You should stay here and pay for your sins. The precious things you acquired were all bought with the dirty money you got from patients who died at your hospital. It's time you paid for what you've done." As Dr. Na left, Director Sun requested to see his lawyer. Director Sun called Yi-jun to ask for help and promised to do everything he asked. Director Sun overheard the conversation between the eldest son and the medical director at Assemblyman Young's old prison, learning that the Assemblyman suffered from severe kidney failure. He needs dialysis every 2 days, and he is about to be transferred to the West Seoul Detention Center. Director Sun asked Yi-jun, "Are you planning to eliminate Assemblyman Young? I'll do it for you." The truth is, 3 years ago, Yi-jun had injected his father with a drug when he realized his father wouldn't give him control of the company. At the time, Han-bit was hiding in the closet and saw everything, but unfortunately, Yi-jun noticed him. When Kai-in came in, she saw her father passed out at his desk and ordered someone to carry the chairman to the emergency room. At this time, Yi-jun was holding Han-bit inside the closet. The guy pushed Yi-jun away and hurried outside. And before that, Chairman Lee had told Han-bit, "If anything happens to me, go to the Depository Trust and Clearing Corporation DTCC and take all my shares and give them to Assemblyman Young. Be sure to not let those stocks fall into Chun's hands." The chairman also handed over a USB drive containing evidence of the corruption at the chemical company that Yi-jun was running. That's why Han-bit drove to the DTCC and took all of Chairman Lee's shares, but Yi-jun followed him. Han-bit started driving away when Yi-jun arrived and saw the stock certificates in his father's name that Han-bit had dropped, so he knew that Han-bit was holding something very valuable. That evening, Yi-jun mobilized a lot of subordinates to pursue and cut off the car carrying Han-bit. But suddenly, the police also showed up at the scene. Not wanting to be captured by Yi-jun, Han-bit got into a police car and deliberately damaged another car, and even intentionally attacked the police so they would arrest him. And that was the only way to escape from Yi-jun at this time. The eldest son, during an investigation, discovered the stock certificates Han-bit had been hiding in a secret location. As a result, Han-bit was taken to the detention center on the same day as Dr. Na Yi-ji. The secretary informed the eldest son, Yi-jun, that Na Yi-ji claimed to have met with Assemblyman Young 3 times after his promotion, but this was a lie. In reality, their first meeting was immediately after Han-bit disappeared. Just then, Dr. Han received a call from Han-bit and immediately drove to meet him, tears streaming down her face. She tried calling Dr. Na but couldn't reach him, so she left a message, "I'm going to meet Han-bit at a park because you're not answering your phone." At that moment, the secretary rushed in to give Yi-jun an update. Dr. Na met with Madam Oh and asked her to turn Hee Yoon Hospital into an outpatient clinic for inmates who can't afford treatment. She would soon need to extend her suspended sentence, so she should do more good deeds to improve her reputation during this time. He also asked what she thought of Prosecutor Young, suggesting he seemed to have a fondness for her. Madame O immediately jumped up, vehemently criticizing Prosecutor Young. Meanwhile, Dr. Na received a call from his sister with some news. Chin informed her mother that Dr. Han was on her way to meet Hanbit. Chairwoman Mo quickly followed in pursuit, hoping to retrieve the stock shares from Hanbit. Dr. Han arrived at a park to find her brother, but Yi Jun and his many underlings followed her closely. Standing on a bridge, Dr. Han spotted her masked brother on the other side of the lake. She burst into tears, finally seeing him after 3 years of relentless searching. However, upon seeing numerous bodyguards appear, Hanbit immediately ran. Hanbit fled the park only to be cut off by Chairwoman Mo Yira's car. Both mother and daughter tried to coax the young man into the vehicle, but Hanbit was determined to flee and didn't trust anyone. The car of Chairwoman Mo and the eldest son drove parallel to each other, and the stepmother and stepson exchanged affectionate glances. Hanbit ran into an underground parking garage and was pursued by many bodyguards from both sides. While running through the tunnel, he was subdued with a tranquilizer dart by Dr. Na Yiji, allowing him to pass out and safely evade the pursuing bodyguards. His older sister, with tears streaming down her face, arrived on the scene, but Dr. Na remained silent, prioritizing Hanbit's safety. The two rival factions converged at the other end of the tunnel, exchanging taunts and insults. Chairman Mo had planted a listening device in Dr. Han's office, while the eldest son obtained information from the telecom company, leading him to this location in an attempt to seize the stock shares held by Hanbit. However, the bodyguards from both sides emerged, reporting that they couldn't find Hanbit, so Yi Jun reluctantly led his men away. As Dr. Han emerged from the tunnel, she saw Chairwoman Mo and her daughter, along with many bodyguards. Realizing she had been followed, she knew she had been tailed. The chairperson and her daughter returned to T. Kang Hospital, where the daughter said to her mother, the chairperson, "It's possible that Hanbit read a comment on Dr. Han's blog and found out his sister was attacked by Kim Seok-woo. That's why he suddenly reappeared after hiding for 3 years." Dr. Han burst in and directly asked the chairperson, "My brother called me for the first time in 2 years and 11 months after disappearing. I saw you and your daughter there just now. I won't pursue you planting listening devices in my office, but you have to tell me why you and Chun's eldest son had my brother kidnapped." It turns out, Director Yi Jun chose me as his therapist just to investigate me. If you don't tell me the reason, I'll use every legal means possible to stop you. Chairperson Mo sat down and proceeded to tell Dr. Han everything related to Hanbit, her brother. 2 years ago, he was an analyst for the chairman, my husband. Chairman Lee assigned him to build the corporation's future management structure and gave him control of a very large amount of shares. After my husband passed away, he withdrew all those shares and ran away. We don't know if it was greed or on the chairman's orders, but in 48 days, there's a shareholder meeting, and whoever holds the shares Hanbit has will become the new owner of T. Kang Group. He's bound to show up during that time. Upon hearing the story, Dr. Han felt utterly bewildered. She tried calling the phone number Hanbit used to call her, but couldn't reach him. As for Prosecutor Young, he was very curious about the order from his superiors to transfer Director Sun to West Seoul Prison, which was also the prison where Assemblyman Young would be sent at the same time as Director Sun. At that moment, Dr. Choi arrived at the detention center to visit his benefactor. He affectionately took Dr. Sun's hand and gently passed him 2 vials of medication, in order to help Director Sun eliminate Assemblyman Young, as ordered by Yi Jun. His wife then entered the room to visit her husband. She said, "You'll be released soon, so don't do anything dangerous." But Director Sun seemed extremely angry and determined to take revenge on Dr. Na Yiji. The next day, Director Sun was put on a vehicle to Tizun prison and was scheduled to ride on the same transport as Assemblyman Young. The Assemblyman, seeing the man who had harmed him in handcuffs, felt very satisfied. He said to Director Sun, "Once I give Yi Jun's files to Na Yiji, you and him are finished." Hearing this, Director Sun wanted to seize the documents to control Yi Jun. He pressed Assemblyman Young, "Why did the eldest son of the T. Kang Group frame you and get you thrown in prison 3 years ago? You were a close friend of his father, so why would he plot to harm you so badly?" But the Assemblyman was determined not to reveal the secret. Then, he experienced a sudden pain. The director asked the guard for permission to inject the assemblyman with medicine. The assemblyman nodded in agreement, as he was in too much pain. So, the guard unlocked Director Sun's handcuffs, and he took a vial of medicine that the guard had given him and swapped it with a vial of medicine he was already holding. Then, he injected the medicine into Assemblyman Young and was handcuffed again by the guard. Director Sun said to Assemblyman Young, "You're about to go into cardiac arrest." Then, he covered the assemblyman's mouth and said, "I have the antidote here. Will you answer the question I just asked?" Chairman Mo Yi-ra visited her beloved son in prison. The spoiled brat tearfully complained to his mother about everything. Dr. Na arrived and sat down at a table to talk. Miss Chin requested a discussion about postponing her brother's execution. Dr. Na told Yi Hwan to get a blood sample first. Thinking his release was imminent, the young man gleefully followed the guard for the blood test. Chairman Mo Yi-ra said, "It seems you still don't want to release my son. I know Yi Jun framed Congressman Young and got him imprisoned, but I really don't understand why he dragged you into it." Dr. Na replied, "When you find out, then we'll discuss postponing the execution." Just then, Dr. Na received a phone call and excused himself. Prosecutor Young informed him, "My superiors ordered me to stop investigating Director Sun and transfer him to your prison. It seems they're up to something. Be careful." Returning to the infirmary, Dr. Na found Congressman Young gasping, pleading, "Save me," before collapsing. Director Sun admitted to injecting the congressman with something, but claimed his memory was failing him and he couldn't recall what it was. He warned that the congressman would soon go into cardiac arrest. Dr. Na rushed Congressman Young into a room for emergency treatment, but without knowing the injected substance, he was unsure how to proceed. Director Sun appeared and asked Dr. Go to leave so he could speak privately with Dr. Na. Dr. Go complied and prevented other medical staff from entering. Director Sun confronted Dr. Na. "When I put him in prison for using fake medical records, you knew it was Yi Jun's order, didn't you? And now you've brought him here to take down Yi Jun, right? If you don't want him to die, answer me." After a moment of thought, Dr. Na calmly addressed the agitated Director Sun. "It's not me, it's you. You've been staring at your watch. I bet you timed Congressman Young's arrival. If he dies, you're in serious trouble. It seems you haven't gotten the information you need from him yet." Realizing his scheme was exposed, Director Sun produced the antidote, stabilizing Congressman Young's condition. After administering the antidote, Dr. Na ordered the guards to take Director Sun back to his cell. But before leaving, Director Sun said, "I bet you don't know why Yi Jun wants to harm you. I overheard Congressman Young say something in the car. If you want to know, come find me." Dr. Na then instructed Dr. Go to start dialysis for Congressman Young. Dr. Na also asked pharmacist Bok to prepare some anti-anxiety medication and to watch over Congressman Young while he stepped out. He drove to an apartment building and entered an apartment where his sister, Han-bit, was hiding. He gave her medication and warned, "Absolutely do not go outside, or we'll both be in danger." As he left, Han-bit pleaded, "Can't you stop this? I'm afraid of losing you like we lost Mom. Let's go back to our hometown. You can be a doctor at the health center, and I'll be a nurse." "Why do we have to struggle like this?" Dr. Na replied. "If I give up, who will fight for the family of that disabled couple? They died unjustly, with no one to protect them. Just hold on a little longer. I promise everything will be all right." The secretary showed Yi Jun photos of Na Yiji at the apartment building and another of him carrying someone into his car the day Han-bit disappeared. At the prison, the loyal guard, Ham, unlocked Director Sun's cell. They both went to Congressman Young's treatment room. Director Sun prepared an injection, but discovered Congressman Young was already dead, having suffocated. Suddenly, pharmacist Bok and another doctor appeared. This doctor, who turned out to be the prison's Dr. Go, began resuscitation efforts, successfully restoring Congressman Young's breathing. Meanwhile, Dr. Na, in the middle of a friendly conversation with Dr. Han, received a call from pharmacist Bok. Congressman Young went into cardiac arrest. It looks like Director Sun injected him with something. Dr. Na ordered Congressman Young to be transferred to Haiyun Hospital. After saying goodbye to Dr. Han, he left for Haiyun Hospital. However, he received a frantic call from his sister. Strangers were stationed outside her apartment since he left, and Han-bit had just woken up. Overhearing the mention of Han-bit, Dr. Han offered to go and help. Back at the prison, Guard O was drugged. Dr. Go deleted the security footage of him injecting Congressman Young. Yi Jun arrived at the apartment building Dr. Na had visited, searching for Han Bit. Dr. Han drove up and told Yi Jun, "I just heard my brother is here. He used to be an analyst at T-Gang Group. You seem to be looking for him too. Could you ask your guards to help me find him?" Yi Jun, seeing an opportunity, agreed. "Let's go find him," Dr. Han said. "Let me park first." She then deliberately crashed her car into an obstacle, setting off the alarm and attracting everyone's attention. Apologizing to the security guard, she claimed to be a new driver. Chairman Mo arrived, telling her stepson, "I've been informed that B is here. I know which building. Do you want to come with me?" Yi Jun declined and left with his men. Mrs. O waited for Prosecutor Young at Ha-Yun Hospital. "Na Yi-ji wants me to buy this hospital. Do you think there's something going on here?" she asked. As they talked, she flirted, making Prosecutor Young blush. Suddenly, they saw an ambulance arrive with Congressman Young, escorted by Dr. Na. Dr. Na began CPR. "It seems Director's son injected Congressman Young with something," he told Prosecutor Young. After several attempts, the monitor showed a flat line. The secretary informed Yi Jun, "Congressman Young is taken care of, thanks to Director's son. The shares are listed among Congressman Young's assets at the old prison. I'll retrieve them tomorrow." Yi Jun exclaimed, "The shares are finally mine. Now all that's left is to eliminate Han Bit. I'll take charge of Congressman Young's funeral. That way, no one will suspect me of going after his assets." Dr. Han made her way up the building and reunited with her brother, Han Bit, after almost 3 years apart. She embraced him tightly. Dr. Na arrived to see them both. He explained to Dr. Han. Chairman Lee asked Han Bit to create a restructuring plan for T-Gang Group and transfer the shares to Congressman Young, turning the company into a public foundation. But Yi Jun found out and injected his own father, the chairman. Unfortunately, Han Bit witnessed it. Now, Congressman Young has been murdered just after being transferred to West Seoul Penitentiary. "We'll retrieve the shares sent from Congressman Young's former residence, and we must find evidence of Chairman Yi Jun's corruption," someone said. Dr. Na Yi-ji then brought the 4 of them to Madame O's VIP hospital room. Dr. Na asked Madame O for help in taking down Chairman Yi Jun of the T-Gang Group. Madame O initially resisted and refused, but eventually relented and agreed to assist Dr. Na. Prosecutor Young began interrogating Director Sun, accusing him of injecting Congressman Young with a drug that caused him to stop breathing. Director Sun vehemently denied it. "Before I could inject him, I discovered he was already dead." When the prosecutor asked who ordered him to do it, Director Sun refused to answer, demanding to speak with Chairman Yi Jun first. Prosecutor Young stepped out and asked his subordinate, "Is there any reason why Chairman Yi Jun would order Congressman Young's elimination?" The subordinate replied, "Chairman Yi Jun is the one who put Congressman Young in prison in the first place." When Congressman Young began investigating T-Gang Chemicals, which Chairman Yi Jun headed, he was promptly imprisoned on bribery charges. Based on the timing of Director Sun's entry into the treatment room, even if he had injected Congressman Young, there wouldn't have been enough time for the drug to take effect. Prosecutor Young realized someone else had silently eliminated Congressman Young, not Director Sun. Chairman Yi Jun announced to the press that he would preside over Congressman Young's funeral because he has no family, and he was my father's close friend for 40 years. I have established the Namshin Foundation according to Congressman Young's will, and I will preserve all his valuable belongings. The wife visited Director Sun in prison, showing him articles about the scandals surrounding the chemical company Chairman Yi Jun once ran. Director Sun recalled a conversation with Congressman Young during the prison transfer. The congressman had said, "When Chairman Yi Jun was the director of the chemical subsidiary, 7 workers died unjustly due to poisoning from unsafe working conditions and overwork. 3 committed suicide due to mental breakdowns. The other 4 didn't survive. Chairman Yi Jun had their families eliminated in a staged car accident during their protest. I was going to expose this, but I was framed for bribery and imprisoned. I have all the documents proving Chairman Yi Jun's embezzlement. I'll tell you where they are if you give me the antidote." Director Sun now laughed triumphantly, believing he had leverage over Chairman Yi Jun and would soon be released. He called Dr. Nan, but the doctor abruptly rejected the call. A box of Congressman Young's belongings was delivered from the prison to Chairman Yi Jun. Inside was a briefcase, but the shares Hanbit had withdrawn were missing. Dr. Na appeared, having just paid his respects to Congressman Young. He returned the envelope of money Chairman Yi Jun had given him to celebrate his promotion to medical director at the prison, wanting to donate it to the newly established Namshan Foundation. Chairman Yi Jun asked, "Did you take Congressman Young's shares? If you don't want to join him in the afterlife, return everything to me." Prosecutor Young and his subordinate also attended the funeral and later ate with Dr. Na. Prosecutor Young asked, "Was Chairman Yi Jun the mastermind behind Congressman Young's death?" Dr. Na remained silent. The secretary informed Chairman Yi Jun, "Before the transfer, Congressman Young sent a package to Madam O. She's in the VIP ward of Tigang Hospital. Her sentence currently deferred." Chairman Yi Jun ordered a check to see if Hanbit was there. At that moment, Madam O and Hanbit were examining the shares Congressman Young had sent. Hanbit declared, "I will reveal this at the Tigang Group Board meeting." But Dr. Na appeared and declared, "We'll take down Chairman Yi Jun now, without waiting for the board meeting." Miss Jin waited outside the prison for the release of inmate Hong Nam Pyo, but he never emerged. Someone called to inform her he'd been released at midnight, just 20 minutes after the new day began, and had been picked up by Chairman Yi Jun's secretary. Madam O and Dr. Han were secretly following them. Seeing them enter a nightclub, Madam O volunteered to follow, both to keep track and to check out the attractive men inside. The bouncers stopped her. She tried bribing them, but they gave her more money and sent her away. Suddenly, an acquaintance who managed the club appeared and escorted her inside. The secretary gave Hong Nam Pyo a plane ticket, wished him safe travels, and then instructed his men to get him high. The club manager entered with a bottle of liquor. Madam O captured photos of the inmate in this special moment. Hong Nam Pyo was escorted to a car and driven away. Madam O got into Dr. Han's car and urged her to head to the airport to prevent his departure. She called Dr. Na. "Hong Nam Pyo is being taken to the airport." Dr. Na immediately called Prosecutor Young. The driver who hit the families of the Tigang Chemicals victims and the one who caused the accident involving the disabled couple 3 years ago are the same person. Chairman Yi Jun sent him to kill Yi Hwan, but the disabled couple took the hit instead. Yi Jun is arranging for this driver to leave the country. 3 years ago, this addict, Hong Nam Pyo, tried to ram Yi Hwan's car, but Yi Hwan dodged, and the disabled couple and their unborn child were the victims. When the 7 Tigang Chemicals workers died, this same driver hit the protesting families in front of the National Assembly building. Chairman Yi Jun ordered his secretary, arrange for airport security to arrest him for drug use before he boards the plane. Then arrange an overdose. Addicts often die from shock after release. Dr. Na called Chairwoman Mo Yira to find out Hong Nam Pyo's destination. The secretary took Hong Nam Pyo to the airport. Madam O, stalling for time, hit a security guard and claimed to know him. Dr. Na intercepted Hong Nam Pyo, injected him with a sedative, and confronted the secretary. "Are you trying to send him back to prison? Are you trying to eliminate him with these drugs?" Hong Nam Pyo tried to flee but was tackled by Dr. Han. Prosecutor Young arrived with police and arrested him. The secretary was berated by Chairman Yi Jun for failing to eliminate Hong Nam Pyo. Yi Jun proposed, "We need to take Dr. Han hostage to control Na Yi-ji." Dr. Na interrogated Hong Nam Pyo, demanding to know who ordered the attacks on the disabled couple and the victims' families. Hong Nam Pyo claimed God had ordered him. Dr. Na slapped him, knocking out a tooth, but he remained stubborn. Dr. Han observed, "Someone must have supplied him with drugs in prison. That's why his teeth are so weak. After 24 hours without drugs, he'll be desperate." Yi Hwan entered with a former inmate and a bowl of noodles. Both, experienced drug users, knew what a withdrawing addict craved. They used the noodles to tempt him. "Did my brother, Lee Yi Jun, order you to do all this?" But Hong Nam Pyo remained silent. A while later, Doctors Na and Han began provoking Hong Nam Pyo to lure him into a trap. They taunted him, saying he was just a drug addict who resorted to hitting people with his car for drug money. His pride wounded, Hong Nam Pyo retorted, "I played a crucial role in eliminating the protesting families of Tigang Chemicals. Your precious Yi Jun's secretary, Choi, ordered me to do it." Pharmacist Bach had activated a recorder, capturing his confession. Dr. Na dragged Hong Nam Pio to Prosecutor Young, presenting evidence that he was the driver who killed the protesting families of Tigang Chemicals. He also presented evidence that Hong Nam Pio caused the deaths of the disabled couple, all under Yi Jun's orders. And here's the video of Yi Jun threatening Han Bit in jail. Can you use this evidence to put him away? Prosecutor Young held the evidence, saying, "I'll submit this to the prosecution myself." However, he seemed hesitant. It turned out that 2 hours earlier, Dr. Go at the prison had called Secretary Choi. Hong Nam Pio confessed everything. Yi Jun then went to see Prosecutor Young. He said, "Since you teamed up with Na Yiji to expose the insurance fraud at Ha Yun Hospital, what have you gained besides upsetting the district attorney? If you ignore this evidence, I'll provide you with a house and help you become a district prosecutor." As a prosecutor, you can easily dismiss the testimony of a mere drug addict. These words made Prosecutor Young waver. He called Yi Jun, "I won't submit this evidence for now." Yi Jun ordered, "Destroy all of it." Meanwhile, Dr. Choi examined the late Assemblyman Young's belongings and found a USB drive hidden in his shoe. He gave it to Director Sun. Plugging it into a tablet, Director Sun discovered it contained evidence of Yi Jun's corruption during his time as director of Tigang Chemicals. Director Sun gave the USB to Warden Ham for safekeeping. "If Yi Jun finds out I have this, he'll kill me," he said. Just then, someone wearing black dress shoes entered. Mrs. O called Na, saying she couldn't find Han Bit and his sister. Dr. Na called Chairman Mo and went to see her and her daughter. Chairman Mo showed him security footage of Yi Jun's men entering the VIP room right after Mrs. O left. Han Bit and Yi Hyun were safely with Chairman Mo. Yi Jun was now in his car, searching for Dr. Han to use as bait. They cut off Dr. Han's car. At that moment, Dr. Na was on the phone with Dr. Han. Yi Jun approached, knocked on the window, and snatched Dr. Han's phone to speak with Dr. Na. "You've filed the complaint against me, haven't you? Han Bit is safely with you. But that complaint won't go anywhere. I'll give you 1 hour. Return Assemblyman Young's black bag." Dr. Na demanded the video of Han Bit leaving the office after Chairman Lee's stroke 3 years prior. 3 years prior, Han Bit had escaped right after Chairman Lee was escorted out of the room by staff. Yi Jun emerged afterward and ordered his secretary to delete his image from the security footage, aiming to frame Han Bit for causing his father's stroke. Now, Yi Jun demanded the original recordings Dr. Na had given Prosecutor Young. After hanging up, he opened the car door and told Dr. Han to come with him. Dr. Na had warned Dr. Han that Yi Jun would take her hostage after she filed the complaint, but she accepted the risk to assess his condition. Han Bit worried about his sister, but Dr. Na explained that she wanted to handle it herself. In the car, Dr. Han told Yi Jun she wanted to hear about his childhood. "If I understand what hurt you as a child, I can treat you better." Yi Jun took Dr. Han to an abandoned house. "This is where my mother took her own life. Do you know where my father was that day? He was at Yi In's IC test, cheering her on. From then on, Mo Yi Ra took over my family. They made my mother so miserable she chose this way out. My father abandoned me, didn't even answer my calls." Yi Jun then experienced a mental episode, becoming agitated but eventually regaining composure. He returned Dr. Han to Tigang Hospital to prepare for the exchange with Na Yiji and released her. At Tigang Hospital, Dr. Na was trying to convince Chairman Mo to give all her shares to Yi Jun to save Dr. Han. "I'd rather burn this place to the ground than give it to him. That's like handing over the entire Tigang group and the hospital," she exclaimed. Dr. Na asked, "Then would you transfer the shares to someone else to protect Tigang?" Yi Jun arrived and saw Dr. Na waiting. Secretary Choi began counting the shares Dr. Na provided. After verifying them, Yi Jun gave Dr. Na the requested video. Dr. Na returned the evidence, including Hong Nam Pio's confession and the video of Han Bit being threatened. "Hold on to these carefully," Dr. Na warned. "I still work at Tisa prison. If you end up there, I'll give you a taste of hell." Yi Jun showed the Tigang shareholders all the shares he had acquired. Chairman Mo and her entourage entered, demanding the transfer of ownership of these shares be stopped. She produced documents proving Chairman Lee had transferred ownership to Assemblyman Young. Yi Jun was shocked upon seeing his father's share transfer agreement. Dr. Na entered with Han Bit. 3 years ago, Chairman Lee transferred all his shares to Assemblyman Young, but it was just notarized. Unfortunately, Assemblyman Young was murdered, so these assets will go to the Namshin Foundation, which Director Yi Jun recently established. Lawyer Jin added, the shares will be managed by someone Chairman Lee and Assemblyman Young trusted, Hanbit. Dr. Na asked, so Hanbit will also become the chairman of the Namshin Foundation? Yi Jun laughed and approached Dr. Han. You dragged Hanbit into this to protect him, didn't you? Dr. Na replied. Since you're relentlessly pursuing him, I have to shield him. Later, Yi Jun berated his lawyer. I won't share a penny of my assets with any social organization or donate to the country. Devise a plan to get those shares back to me, understood? Dr. Na saw his sister off at the airport as she left to study in Canada. He then told Dr. Han, as long as Hanbit holds the shares, Yi Jun won't dare touch him, but we need to act fast before he becomes a danger to us. Chairman Mo told Dr. Na, I'll temporarily accept Hanbit holding the shares, but the fight isn't over. Her daughter pointed out, T-Gang Hospital has 8 key figures, 4 on each side. Whoever becomes head of the VIP ward will determine which side controls the hospital. Dr. Na then proposed a candidate for the position. Meanwhile, a prosecutor informed Prosecutor Young, Director Sun's arrest warrant has been withdrawn. Assemblyman Young died before Director Sun entered his treatment room. At that moment, Director Sun, dressed in a suit, was preparing to leave prison. His charges cleared thanks to Dr. Na. The doctor immediately requested, show me the USB Congressman Young left behind. But Director Sun retorted, that's my lifeline. Return Heon Hospital to me, and I'll consider it. Dr. Na countered, what about running the VIP ward at T-Gang Hospital? It's far more lucrative than Heon Hospital. Director Sun's interest was piqued. If I get that position, he promised, I'll even be your puppet. Chairwoman Mo Yi-ra addressed Dr. Na Yi-ji. You know the head of T-Gang's VIP ward committee is the chairman of JH Group, right? His son is in jail because of Director Sun. Do you think he'll agree to let Sun run the VIP ward? Dr. Na simply replied, I'll arrange it. The lawyer informed Yi Jun, the eldest son, the contract transferring Chairman Lee's shares to Congressman Young can be voided since it was recently notarized. If Chairman Lee dies, you can file for inheritance and receive half of those shares. Yi Jun asked, so, as long as my father dies, I'll inherit T-Gang Group? He then turned to his secretary. Don't elderly people often die at night? He then summoned Director Jang of T-Gang Hospital's emergency center. Dr. Na met with the JH Group chairman and asked him to nominate Director Sun as the new head of T-Gang's VIP ward. Director Sun confidently entered. Upon seeing him, the chairman erupted in anger, vehemently rejecting Dr. Na's request. The doctor calmly stated, I found a suitable liver donor for your son. I tested all the inmates and found this man, and he signed the consent form. The chairman, hearing this, promised to nominate Director Sun before all other committee members. Prior to this, Dr. Na had asked Mrs. O to test all the inmates receiving outpatient treatment at Heon Hospital to find a matching liver. Director Sun covered all expenses and would also provide the inmate with funds to buy land for farming and fish raising after the successful transplant. Pharmacist Bach found the vial of kali used on Congressman Young and stored it in a cabinet. Dr. Go lurked outside. Later, the pharmacist confided in Dr. Han, I recently discovered someone I trusted did something terrible that I can't accept. What should I do? Dr. Go then snuck into the room and stole the vial. Director Sun arrived at T-Gang Hospital, not to work, but to meet Yi Jun. He began, you sent so many people to kill Congressman Young that I was finally released. After the accident at T-Gang Chemical, Dr. Go had to close his hospital and became unemployed. I hired him at your request. He's the one who took care of Congressman Young. Now, I have some business to discuss with you. Director Sun left with a smug look on his face. The emergency room director, upon entering the hospital, was surrounded by staff congratulating him on his nomination for head of the VIP ward. Yi Jun had promised him the position in exchange for injecting Chairman Lee with something. As the director approached Chairman Lee's room, Dr. Na appeared and asked, Did Yi Jun promise you the VIP ward position if you injected Chairman Lee? The director walked on, warning Dr. Na, you can't fight Yi Jun. He's 10 times more powerful than Director Sun. Dr. Na immediately retorted, before you catch him, I'll catch you first. Chairwoman Mo Yi-ra proposed promoting Director Sun to head of the VIP ward, but the hospital director opposed it due to Director Sun's past scandals. Dr. Na stepped forward and said, "We just need to ruin the opposing candidate." Eldest son Yi Jun entered Chairman Lee's father's treatment room and removed his oxygen mask. Suddenly, Dr. Na appeared and asked, "Is this what Hanbit witnessed 3 years ago?" She then reattached the oxygen mask. The eldest son said, "Last time, I injected him with a needle when a lady was present, when I was only 17, driving my mother to despair and ultimately her death. He even left me alone to handle her funeral. In the time of the gods, what I just did was commonplace." Dr. Na retorted, "No matter what, no one does that to their parents. Do you think you're a god?" A moment later, Director Zhang of the emergency room entered, holding a vial of medicine. Dr. Na demanded, "Let me see what kind of medicine that is." But the director refused and put the vial in his pocket. The chairwoman appeared and asked to see if it was an antibiotic. Young Miss Yi checked and confirmed it was indeed an antibiotic, allowing Director Zhang to administer it to Chairman Lee. Dr. Na moved forward, feigning assistance to her former superior. After the injection, Yi Jun and Director Zhang stepped outside. Dr. Na requested of the chairwoman and her daughter, "Install surveillance cameras in this room." Later, Dr. Na received a call from pharmacist Bach, who informed her, "I put away the medicine that might have been given to Congressman Jung, but someone took it while I was having tea with Dr. Han. I suspect someone very strongly." Dr. Na advised the pharmacist, "Go home, I'll take care of this." Suddenly, Dr. Go appeared, startling pharmacist Bach. He then invited her for a drink. At the hospital, as they walked outside, Yi Jun asked Director Zhang, "What medicine were you about to inject earlier?" He replied that it was a drug that could cause cardiac arrest. But after Yi Jun drove off, Director Zhang checked his pocket and couldn't find the vial. He suddenly realized that Dr. Na Yiji had stealthily taken it while pretending to help him. Dr. Na demanded of the chairwoman and her daughter, "Show me all of Director Zhang's medical records. I want to take him down so Director Sun can win the election for head of the VIP ward tomorrow." Pharmacist Bach went drinking with Dr. Go and deliberately asked about the obstetrics and gynecology hospital he had run years ago. Sensing her genuine interest, Dr. Go revealed, "I used to run an Ob-Gyn hospital across from the T-Gang chemical company. The female workers there suffered from many women's health issues." At this moment, Prosecutor Jung, driven by a sense of shame over previously dropping charges against Assemblyman Jung concealing evidence of the chemical company's crimes 3 years prior, including those of Yi Jun, the eldest son, decided to reopen the investigation. He then received a file from Dr. Na Yiji containing video evidence showing Dr. Go deliberately deleting footage of himself injecting Assemblyman Jung after their drinking session with pharmacist Bach. Dr. Go is seen leaving and looking at a picture of his wife. He then notices pharmacist Bach following him. Suddenly, numerous police cars arrive and arrest Dr. Go. The prosecutor announces, "Dr. Go, you are under arrest for the attempted murder of Assemblyman Jung." Pharmacist Bach picks up a dropped wallet and sees a picture of Dr. Go and his wife. Prosecutor Jung calls Dr. Na to inform him of Dr. Go's arrest and asks, "Why did you install a camera in the prison's surveillance room?" Dr. Na replies, "Someone tried to kill me before, so I installed it as a precaution." Director Sun, overhearing the conversation, remarks, "Hearing you say that makes me feel uneasy." After Dr. Na leaves, Director Sun calls Yi Jun to arrange a meeting. Director Sun tells Yi Jun, "Dr. Go has been arrested by the prosecution. Na Yiji is helping me secure the position of head of the VIP ward at T-Gang Hospital and is working to defeat Director Zhang so I can win. I think you should help me become the head of the VIP ward. I'll be much more valuable to you then." Miss Chin provides Na Yiji with the medical records of the head of the emergency room, Director Zhang, and Director Sun. While Director Sun's health records are impeccable, Director Zhang has not undergone a colonoscopy. Dr. Na recalls the head nurse informing him 3 years prior that Director Zhang suffered from acute enteritis. He then reveals to everyone that Director Zhang has Crohn's disease, a chronic inflammatory bowel disease. We will use the complications of his illness to prevent him from winning the head of the VIP ward position. Dr. Na requests of the chairwoman, ask Director Zhang to undergo a colonoscopy and have Chief of Gastroenterology, Dr. B. Jun Yu, perform it. Director Sun follows Dr. Na and asks, Chief Bi Jun-yu was also involved in falsifying Assemblyman Young's medical records. Are you planning to get revenge on him too? Dr. Na replies, just get ready to become the head of the VIP ward. I'll catch them all. Director Jang undergoes a colonoscopy performed by Chief Bi Jun-yu. Prior to the procedure, Chairwoman Mo met privately with Chief Bi Jun-yu and instructed him, remove the polyp on Director Jang's intestinal wall. If you do this, I promise to recommend you for head of the VIP ward in the next term. Chief Bi Jun-yu informs Director Jang, I removed the polyp in your intestine, but I will record your health status as normal so you can easily become head of the VIP ward. Here are your antibiotics and painkillers. These 2 bottles of medication had been previously given to Chief Bi Jun-yu by Dr. Na. So, Director Jang went home and stayed in the bathroom all night. Meanwhile, Pharmacist Bok and Dr. Han arrived at the location of Dr. Go's former obstetrics and gynecology clinic to investigate. They questioned a woman who owned the building across the street. She told them that 3 years prior, many female workers from the T-Gang chemical plant had suffered from gynecological problems, resulting in miscarriages. They had asked the director of the obstetrics and gynecology clinic to document their illnesses so they could sue T-Gang Chemical, but he refused. Eventually, they reported him to the city, believing he was colluding with the chemical company. The clinic was subsequently investigated and shut down. When Pharmacist Bok showed the woman a photo of Dr. Go, she confirmed, yes, that's him. He was the director. I think his wife also had a miscarriage, and she ended up in a mental hospital. He left town with nothing. Director Jang, clutching his stomach, entered the hospital and demanded, give me a painkiller. In his agony, he didn't even look at the doctor administering the injection. When he opened his eyes, he saw it was Dr. Na Yiji. What did you give me? Director Jang asked. Dr. Na replied, I don't recall what I injected you with, but you have a presentation for the VIP ward chief position in 30 minutes. Good luck enduring the pain until then. Chairwoman Mo Yi-ra escorted Director Jun into the meeting for the election of the new VIP ward chief. Eldest son Yi-jun escorted Director Jang in. Moments later, Director Jang, unable to bear the pain any longer, collapsed on the floor, clutching his stomach. He was rushed to the emergency room. The hospital director announced, Director Jang has been suffering from chronic enteritis. Chairwoman Mo said, what if he has an attack while operating on a VIP patient? Yi-jun turned to leave, then turned back and said to his mother, you play dirty. Just let the vote proceed naturally. A secretary informed Yi-jun, Chairman Lee won't last much longer. Yi-jun muttered, so I'll be holding 2 funerals this month. Then, a nurse entered Chairman Lee's room, quietly switched off the heart monitor, and did something to his body. Dr. Choi informed Director Jang, we need to operate on you immediately. But the surgeon is at a conference and fully booked with surgeries, so I've asked Dr. Na Yiji to perform the operation. When Dr. Na approached, Director Jang pleaded, please save me, I have a wife and son at home. Dr. Na replied, if you want to see them again, tell me who orchestrated the false diagnosis against me regarding Congressman Young, and who prevented my mother from getting surgery. Was it Lee Yi-jun? Answer me, Director Jang countered. Between me and Chairman Lee, who would you choose to save? If you choose to save Chairman Lee, your license will be permanently revoked for refusing to perform life-saving surgery. Dr. Na, upon hearing this, had a premonition that something bad would happen to Chairman Lee, so he immediately called Madam Chairman Mo. At that moment, Director Sun had just won the position of head of the VIP department at T-Gang Hospital with 100% of the votes. Madam Chairman Mo was busy clapping in celebration and completely unaware of Dr. Na's call. Meanwhile, Director Jang was also in critical condition, so Dr. Na scrubbed in and performed surgery to repair a perforated bowel and save his life. The eldest son, upon arriving at his father's Chairman Lee's room, discovered that the chairman had already breathed his last. Someone then rushed to inform Madam Chairman Mo Yi-ra, Chairman Lee has passed away. After completing the surgery, Dr. Na called Director Sun to inquire about Chairman Lee's condition, and Director Sun informed him, he's dead. Dr. Na immediately recalled the warning Director Jang had given him earlier. Yi H-wan, the younger son, was escorted back from prison by the warden to mourn his father. He burst into tears, unable to believe that his father was gone. He angrily accused his older brother, Yi-jun, did you do something to father? The eldest son slapped his half-brother and shouted, "The outcome today is all because of parasites like you, understand?" Yi-Hwan then suffered a seizure, collapsing and foaming at the mouth, causing his mother and sister to panic. The lawyer daughter said to her mother, the chairman, "According to the surveillance cameras, Yi-Jun didn't do anything to father, so we can't conclude that he killed him. Since Director Jun has become the head of the VIP department, the number of supporters on our side and the opposing side are now equal. If Yi-Hwan participates in the upcoming shareholders meeting, we'll have another ally and we'll definitely win. He must be granted a stay of execution at all costs. Go back to prison and wait." Yi-Hwan knelt before his mother, bid her farewell, and returned to prison. Back in prison, the younger son knelt on the ground, begging Dr. Na to find a way to get him a stay of execution, promising to be his servant for life. The doctor said, "Doing this won't bring back the disabled couple." The younger son promised to repent every day. "Please give me a chance," Dr. Na warned. "Doing this could put your life in danger." But Yi-Hwan replied, "I'm not afraid of anything." Dr. Na met with Madam Chairman and her daughter to outline a plan to help Yi-Hwan get a stay of execution. "I'll use his epilepsy to induce rhabdomyolysis, a syndrome that can occur in people with epilepsy. This syndrome can lead to acute kidney failure, but it will help Yi-Hwan get a stay of execution." At this time, Director Jun also secretly met with the eldest son, Yi-Jun, to begin plotting a rebellion. He wanted control over the hospital's medical equipment procurement, and in return, he would do everything in his power to prevent the youngest son, Yi-Hwan, from receiving a stay of execution. "You'll have my vote because I'm already the head of the VIP ward. Plus, if Yi-Hwan's execution isn't postponed, you'll definitely be the head of the entire T-Gang group." When Dr. Na returned to the prison, the warden informed him, "I've found someone to fill Dr. Go's position, and that person is none other than Dr. Choi, Director Sun's trusted subordinate." Dr. Na called Director Sun and said, "I'll accept Dr. Choi to work at the prison. In return, send me the recording that Congressman Young left behind, the one that exposes Yi-Jun's crimes." Upon hearing this, Director Sun quickly hung up. Director Sun told Yi-Jun, "I've placed Dr. Choi in the prison, so now we'll know every plan Na Yi-ji uses to help Yi-Hwan get a stay of execution." Yi-Jun immediately replied, "I heard that to get a stay of execution, one must be on the brink of life and death. If possible, have my younger brother logged out from this earth permanently." Dr. Na began showing Dr. Choi around the prison. Dr. Choi, curious, asked, "Why is Yi-Hwan wearing such thick clothes in the middle of summer?" But a nurse immediately instructed Dr. Choi, "Go to your workstation and stop being so nosy." Dr. Na told Yi-Hwan, "There are many people who want to prevent you from leaving here, so you have to try your best. The sicker you appear, the better." Yi-Hwan also did everything he could to weaken his body. Dr. Na instructed him to minimize his water intake. That evening, while exhausted, Dr. Choi approached Yi-Hwan with a bottle of electrolyte water and urged him, "Drink this to regain your strength." He also continuously badmouthed Dr. Na in front of Yi-Hwan. Yi-Hwan took the bottle and knocked Dr. Choi over, causing him to give up and run out. Yi-Hwan remained determined not to consume the water. Dr. Choi reported to Director Sun, "Na Yi-ji is trying to induce rhabdomyolysis in Yi-Hwan to get him a stay of execution," Director Sun ordered. "At all costs, keep Yi-Hwan in prison, but he must stay alive," Dr. Choi replied. "Didn't Yi-Jun order his brother's elimination?" Director Sun said. "He abandoned me multiple times when I was in trouble, so I'm not entirely on his side." Dr. Choi left, and as he got into his car, he saw Warden Ham already sitting inside, while Yi-Jun's secretary was lying in wait behind the car. Dr. Na instructed Yi-Hwan, "We need your urine to turn the color of cola for this to work." Yi-Hwan put in all his effort. Finally, his urine turned the desired cola color. Dr. Na immediately ordered his subordinate, "Prepare the transfer for Yi-Hwan to T-Gang Hospital right away." Prosecutor Young and Mrs. Oh were enjoying themselves at an amusement park. He presented her with a bouquet of flowers. Mrs. Oh then showed the prosecutor a video proving that Yi-Jun, the eldest son, had attempted to kidnap Hanbit at Heon Hospital. "I finally understand why Na Yi-ji told me to acquire that hospital. I extracted this footage from data 3 years ago." A paparazzi photographer was secretly snapping pictures of Prosecutor Young and Mrs. O, which quickly made their way to Yi Jun. He ordered his secretary, "Send these to the prosecutor's office immediately." Meanwhile, Dr. Choi was injecting Yi Hwan with a drug, but the young man suddenly woke up, injected the drug back into Dr. Choi, and used a taser on Warden Ham. Dr. Na appeared, revealing that he had given Yi Hwan the taser for self-defense, anticipating this situation. Na Yiji addressed Dr. Choi. "You know what will happen without the antidote. Who ordered you to kill Yi Hwan? Call that person now." Dr. Choi made the call to Yi Jun's secretary. Dr. Na snatched the phone and said, "Director Jun, you deliberately sent people to murder Yi Hwan, didn't you? These two have confessed that you gave the order. If you want me to keep quiet, give me the recording proving that Yi Jun ordered the elimination of the pregnant women from T-Gang Chemical. Now." Hearing this, Yi Jun, knowing that Director Sun possessed a file on Congressman Young, commanded his secretary, "Get Director Jun here immediately," Dr. Choi insisted to Dr. Na. "I didn't call Director Sun," Yi Hwan retorted. "Of course, Dr. Na knows who you called. He said that on purpose so my brother would eliminate your Director Sun." At that moment, Dr. Na received a call from Prosecutor Young. The doctor urged, "We need to stop Yi Jun from inheriting the T-Gang group. I'll file a motion to suspend Yi Hwan's sentence. We absolutely must get him out to stop Yi Jun." Prosecutor Young agreed. Suddenly, Dr. Na noticed Yi Hwan had lost consciousness and began CPR, saying, "You can't die now." He rushed Yi Hwan to T-Gang Hospital. Inside the ambulance, Dr. Na Yiji worked tirelessly to restart Yi Hwan's heart. Upon arrival, Chairman Mo yelled at Dr. Na, demanding, "Revive my son. If he dies, what meaning is there to this hospital or the T-Gang group?" Dr. Na said, "He's stable now. You could put him on dialysis, but if you do, his sentence suspension will be revoked." The chairman's wife declared, "Save my son, no matter the cost." But the young master woke up and told his mother, "I'm all right, Mom. Listen to Dr. Na Yiji. Dr. Na, please help me get released." Dr. Na immediately requested the cancellation of dialysis and ordered only Roman IV fluids. Madam O and Prosecutor Young were returning from a date when a swarm of reporters' cars surrounded them, bombarding them with questions. "You're out on bail with a suspended sentence. Why are you here? Are you Prosecutor Young? Why are you with Madam O?" The prosecutor was subsequently reprimanded by his superior, who presented photos proving the two had been at an amusement park. These photos, the superior revealed, were provided by the T-Gang News. He informed Prosecutor Young that he was being transferred to a provincial prosecutor's office. Back at his office, Prosecutor Young found his colleagues seizing all his case files. A staff member explained, "They're reinvestigating all the sentence suspensions you approved, and Madam O will be the first they scrutinize." He then handed Prosecutor Young Yi Hwan's suspension documents, just sent over by Dr. Na Yiji. The secretary informed his boss, "Prosecutor Young has been transferred to the provinces." Director Sun entered the room. The eldest son asked, "Do you have the recording of Congressman Young that incriminates me?" Dr. Na mistakenly thought you were listening in and told me about it. Director Sun boldly replied, "Yes, I have it. I was afraid of ending up like Congressman Young, so I kept it as leverage. But I guarantee I can eliminate Yi Hwan for you if you give me control of T-Gang Group's equipment procurement." Yi Jun agreed to this, his only concern being the removal of his younger brother. He then ordered his secretary, "Get me the address of Director Sun's daughter in New York." Prosecutor Young visited Na Yiji, informing him, "I'm being transferred, so I don't know if I can approve Yi Hwan's suspension." It seems Yi Jun sent reporters to photograph Madam O and me and even threatened the prosecutor's office. The video of him orchestrating Hanbit's kidnapping 3 years ago is the only evidence we have. Dr. Na responded, "The T-Gang Group shareholder meeting is in 2 weeks. I believe we can take down Yi Jun by then. I need you to join forces with me for this final blow." The prosecutor declared, "I have 21 vacation days a year. I used 3 for a blind date. I'll use the remaining 18 to find evidence against Yi Jun with you." Madam O appeared and asked, "Who did you go on a blind date with?" He replied, "I'll do whatever it takes to protect my partner. Next week, Yi Hwan and I will undergo health checkups together." Dr. Na brought a can of drink and told Yi Hwan, "Drink this. Someone intervened, so the checkups are next week. We have to fabricate a different illness to fit the timeline. I need to study Chairman Lee's and Yi Jun's medical records to find a hereditary disease in the family. The chairman's wife intervened, saying, Yi Jun knew about Chairman Lee's hereditary disease and injected him with something, causing him 3 years of agony before he died. I can't let Yi Hwan suffer that same terrible pain. If this triggers that hereditary disease in Yi Hwan, I won't be able to bear. Miss Yi chased after her mother, asking, Isn't it just Alzheimer's that Dad has? Why does he have another hereditary disease, Mom? Dr. Na went to the hospital room to visit Director Zhang of the emergency department and said, You better get well soon, before they throw you in jail. You forged so many medical records at Director Jun's request that you're going to be eating prison food for at least 3 years. And don't think Yi Jun will help you. Clearly, when they voted for the VIP ward director, not a single person voted for you, not even those in Yi Jun's faction. Because you're no longer of any use to them. Director Zhang immediately replied, Do you know why Yi Jun dragged you into the falsified diagnosis of Assemblyman Young? And even prevented your mother from having surgery? It all stems from a truck running into the families of T-Gang chemical workers who were protesting. Yi Jun wanted to eliminate all the workers and their families, but you tried to save them. That hindered his plan to inherit the T-Gang group. Director Zhang continued, It seems like he doesn't remember who you are. When he called me to talk about appointing me as the head of the VIP ward, he didn't remember who I was, even though he had met me and given me orders 3 years ago. Maybe he's contracted the same hereditary disease as Chairman Lee. It's not Alzheimer's, it's something else. That disease is only known by the head of T-Gang Hospital. Dr. Na walked back to Yi Hwan's room and ran into Director Sun. Dr. Na asked, You're still alive, Director Jun said. I've met with Yi Jun. Not only am I alive, but I'm even more valuable in his eyes. Because I'm holding a fatal weapon against him. I don't know yet whether to side with you or with him. But maybe I'll just stand back and watch, then lean in the direction the wind is blowing. Director Sun returned to his office, logged into the VIP ward management software of T-Gang Hospital, and tried to search for Chairman Lee's medical records, but the file was password protected. Dr. Han met his younger brother, Hanbit, and asked about Chairman Lee's symptoms 3 years ago. Hanbit said, The late chairman's face and hands would often tremble, he had frequent cramps, and he would collapse. I often took Chairman Lee to the nearest hospital in emergencies. Dr. Han went to that hospital to inquire. Afterwards, the attending doctor showed him the prescription that the late Chairman Lee had used. Dr. Han drove away and remembered Yi Jun often had facial twitches, and his hands shook frequently too. So Dr. Han knew that he had also contracted the hereditary disease that his father Chairman Lee had suffered from. Director Sun secretly met with the chief of T-Gang Hospital to inquire about the true hereditary disease that the late Chairman Lee had suffered from. However, the chief refused to disclose it, fearing it would affect the stability of the T-Gang group. This entire conversation was overheard by the eldest son sitting nearby. The eldest son slammed his teacup on the table to let Director Sun know he was present. The eldest son walked outside, gave Director Sun a menacing look, and then left. Director Sun's wife called him and said, Someone just sent you a set of mourning clothes. At this time, Dr. Na was also researching the medical records of the late Chairman Lee and the eldest son, Yi Jun, and searching for information based on the medications they were both taking. Dr. Na discovered that they both suffered from a hereditary disease called Huntington's disease. Dr. Han rushed to inform Dr. Na. The late Chairman Lee didn't have Alzheimer's, and the eldest son, Yi Jun, also has Huntington's disease like his father Chairman Lee. Chairwoman Mo Yi-ra, after hearing that Dr. Na wanted to use Huntington's disease to help Yi Hwan get his sentence suspended, vehemently opposed it and called Miss Chin out for a private conversation. It turned out that Miss Chin herself had given Dr. Na the medical records of her father and the eldest son, Yi Jun. Miss Chin now admitted to her mother that she had told Dr. Na about the hereditary disease that her father and Yi Jun were suffering from. If Yi Hwan really has the disease, it won't stay hidden for long. You know very well that Yi Hwan isn't capable of taking over the company. The person managing the group should be you and me. For the past 35 years, people have always gossiped that you're incompetent and married Dad only for money. Now you have to prove them wrong. The younger son, Yi H1, stepped out and asked his mother, "Just make it so that I have that hereditary disease. I've known for a long time that I'm not capable of inheriting the group. I just want Yi Jun to pay for killing Dad." Dr. Na proceeded to perform an MRI to determine Yi H1's condition. Director Sun gifted Dr. Choi and Warden Ham each with a set of mourning clothes because they had betrayed him and sided with the eldest son, Yi Jun, and secretly eliminated Yi H1 while he was in prison. They both immediately knelt on the ground to beg Director Sun for forgiveness, and promised to be loyal to Director Sun from now on. Warden Ham returned to Director Sun the USB containing evidence of the eldest son Yi Jun's crimes. After that, they both left. The wife came out and advised her husband, "Don't go up against the eldest son, Yi Jun." But she received a call from her daughter in America, so the wife urged her husband, "Take down that bastard Yi Jun right away. He even sent my daughter a set of mourning clothes." Madame O was cutting holes in her clothes and sunbathing on the roof to fake her genetic blood condition. Then, she met the younger son, Yi H1. He said, "I really have Huntington's disease." Then, he burst into tears, afraid he would die like his father the chairman. Dr. Na informed the chairwoman, "According to the brain MRI results, Yi H1 does indeed have Huntington's disease. He doesn't have epilepsy either. That's a manifestation of the hereditary disease." The chairwoman seemed distraught and requested that the doctor re-examine her son one more time. Then, she fainted from shock. Director Sun also showed up. Director Sun now demands to collaborate with Dr. Na to take down the eldest son, Yi Jun. Director Sun uses the USB that Assemblyman Young left behind as bait to get Dr. Na to agree to his request. Afterwards, he goes to Yi Jun and kneels on the ground to apologize for secretly meeting with the hospital director at the Japanese restaurant. Director Sun also tells Yi Jun, "Na Yi-ji wants to help Yi H1 get a stay of execution by claiming he has Huntington's disease. But who would have thought Yi H1 actually has the disease? If it comes out that he's sick, he won't be qualified to attend the upcoming board meeting." The eldest son then asks, "Was that why you met with the hospital director last time? To see if I have Huntington's? Did you think the funeral clothes I sent weren't enough?" The eldest son is now shaking, so his secretary asks Director Sun to leave. The eldest son, Yi Jun, orders his secretary, "Prevent that bastard Yi H1 from getting a stay of execution at all costs, and don't let anyone know he has Huntington's. Otherwise, people will find out I have the disease too." Director Sun walks out and smirks, and everything he just said to the eldest son was laid out by Dr. Na beforehand. Because if the eldest son finds out about this, he'll come after Yi H1 himself to deal with him. If we catch him in the act, we'll be able to confirm that he's had Huntington's for a long time and that he killed his father to seize the inheritance. Director Sun gives Dr. Na the USB and demands he has to be allowed to run T-Gang Group's trading organization. Dr. Na says, "I agree," takes the USB, and actually, Yi H1 doesn't have Huntington's disease. Dr. Na tells Yi H1, "This can't be told to anyone. You need to act like you really have the disease so that Yi Jun will believe it and take action against you. Take this medicine. It will decrease your balance and dexterity. It will also make you anxious, depressed, and prone to suicidal thoughts. Just pretend to go up to the rooftop to get some air. Dr. Choi will intentionally record your reckless behavior." And that's not all. He could also suffer from speech and mobility difficulties. In the worst case, he might not recover at all. The young master then said, "Because of me, someone had to leave forever, so please, go ahead and administer the injection." After that, the young master Yi H1 began to practice walking, taking slow, deliberate steps. And these videos were given by Director Sun to the eldest son, Yi Jun, to watch. Director Sun also told the eldest son, "At this rate, Yi H1's suspension of sentence is sure to be approved." The secretary also announced, "None of the members of the review board for the suspension of sentence are willing to accept bribes." The eldest son then requested that Director Sun find out Yi H1's training schedule so that he could easily take action against his younger brother. Director Jun informed Dr. Na, the eldest son, Yi Jun, has taken the bait. Dr. Na requested Director Jun have him come to the rehabilitation center at 6 p.m. Director Jun also called the eldest son, Yi Jun, to inform him of the time and location. The prosecutor visited Mrs. O and advised her to return to prison to serve her sentence. I've reinvestigated your murder case and know that you took the blame for your ex-husband. Just go back for a while, and I will appeal to have the charges dropped and get you released. The lady said, so I can rightfully become the lady of the future chief prosecutor then? Afterwards, she hugged and kissed Prosecutor Young passionately. Dr. Na listened to the recording on the USB drive and learned that the eldest son had ordered the elimination of the entire family of doctors who had participated in treating the workers at the chemical plant he was running at the time. Dr. Na, along with Prosecutor Young and everyone else, gathered at Tigang Hospital to wait for the eldest son, Yi Jun, to arrive and carefully monitor every movement of the young master Yi H-wan through surveillance cameras. Director Jun called the secretary to ask when the eldest son, Yi Jun, would arrive. Then, he announced, they'll be here in 30 minutes. At this moment, Dr. Na received a call from a doctor at the prison, informing him, a prisoner with a respiratory illness has infected many other prisoners, causing them all to cough. The pharmacist, Bach, said, they're showing signs of pulmonary tuberculosis TB. Dr. Na immediately announced, I have an urgent matter and have to return to the prison immediately. As Dr. Na Yiji got into his car, he saw the eldest son, Yi Jun, also driving into the hospital, so he immediately called Prosecutor Young to inform him of the situation and to be ready to take action. The secretary told the eldest son, Yi Jun, the cameras are only showing replays of old footage, and the new recordings will be deleted immediately. He then called the employee in the surveillance room, changed the camera video. Because of this, no one could know that the eldest son was entering Yi H-wan's therapy room. He then turned off the lights and entered the room. The young master, Yi H-wan, informed Dr. Na that Yi Jun had arrived. However, in the monitoring room, everyone could only see Yi H-wan undergoing normal physical therapy. The chairwoman entered and asked, "What are you all doing here?" The eldest son, Yi Jun, walked in and produced a syringe. He filled it with a drug and said, "This Huntington's disease will kill you, me and father. I just want to help him go sooner. He's always favored you and Yi in over me, so he must be happy to see you again. Father, your precious son is about to join you. This is what I injected into him 3 years ago." Then, the eldest son injected the drug directly into the neck of his half-brother, Yi H-wan. The young master, Yi H-wan, collapsed to the floor and asked Dr. Na, "Why isn't anyone coming?" The eldest son then removed the earpiece from his brother's ear and spoke to Dr. Na Yiji. Afterwards, he crushed the recording device. Dr. Na immediately turned his car around and sped back to the hospital, calling Prosecutor Young to inform him, Yi Jun injected Yi H-wan with the same drug he used on Chairman Lee 3 years ago. He might inject him again, so get to that room quickly. Everyone immediately rushed to the rehabilitation room. Director Sun realized that the camera feed had been looping repeatedly. They arrived to find the young master Yi H-wan in cardiac arrest and immediately rushed him to the emergency room. Dr. Na arrived on the scene, grabbed Yi Jun by the collar, and demanded, "What was the second drug you injected him with?" The eldest son replied, "I switched drugs when I realized he was wearing a wire. Go run your own tests. You're the best doctor in Tigang Hospital's emergency room." Dr. Na went to attend to Yi H-wan. The eldest son asked his secretary, "Is the trap at the prison set?" Dr. Na tried desperately to revive Yi H-wan, but all his efforts resulted in flat lines on the electrocardiogram. Director Jun said to Dr. Na Yiji, "Yi Jun has set a trap at the prison. This is an emergency respiratory arrest case. If you don't get back there in time, you'll face disciplinary action and be fired. Then there's no way you'll be able to catch Lee Yi Jun." Dr. Na looked utterly defeated and requested, "Please, just leave me alone for a moment." Dr. Han came over and sat on the floor next to Dr. Na. The doctor broke down crying, saying, "Why is it so hard to punish an evil person? The families of the victims of Tigang Chemical, my mother, and that disabled couple, he victimized them all," Dr. Han said. "Because he's like a god. He has money, status, and social connections." But Dr. Na declared, "I will kill that self-proclaimed god with my own hands." Yi H-wan is in a coma in the intensive care unit. The chairwoman reprimanded Dr. Na, saying he hadn't foreseen the situation her son was in. Dr. Na replied, "I will take full responsibility." But everything that happened originated from your family." The chairwoman then slapped Dr. Na and exclaimed, "You are the real devil." Afterward, Dr. Na walked out. The chairwoman said to her daughter, "I will help him. Once Yi Jun is taken down, I'll get rid of Na Yiji too." Director Jun and his wife were buying suitcases to escape to the United States to reunite with their daughter. Dr. Na appeared and said, "I listened to the recording on the USB drive, but I didn't hear anything." Yi Jun admitted to murder. "Where's the beginning of that audio file?" Then, he brought Director Sun to meet Prosecutor Jung. The prosecutor tempted Director Sun, "Let's work together to arrest Yi Jun. The charges against you for falsifying medical diagnosis for 3 years haven't been dropped yet." Hearing this, Director Sun had no choice but to agree to partner with Dr. Na once again. The secretary approached Yi Jun and said, "Na Yiji wants to see you." Then, a recording played where Yi Jun confirmed he had a mental illness and admitted to injecting Chairman Lee. And Dr. Na Yiji replayed the recording where Yi Jun injected Yi H1 the night before. Dr. Na told Yi Jun, "I'm going to arrest you in my own way." Meanwhile, downstairs, Prosecutor Jung arrived with many police officers. Then, they stormed inside. The prosecutor announced, "We are here to arrest Lee Yi Jun for the murder of the families of the victims of T-Gang Chemical Company." But they were blocked by a line of security guards. Both sides began to struggle. Prosecutor Jung then forced his way inside. The prosecution team took the elevator upstairs, only to be blocked by another line of security guards. The head of T-Gang Group's legal department, also a former chief prosecutor, stepped forward and spoke to Prosecutor Jung. He loudly told the prosecutor, "Leave, you can't do anything to Director Yi Jun with some flimsy audio files." But Prosecutor Jung still ordered his officers to storm inside. The secretary ran in to inform Yi Jun. "Prosecutor Jung is very persistent and won't give up," Dr. Na said to Yi Jun. "I've thought of 100,000 ways to arrest you, but all were in vain. Even if I find evidence or get recordings, they're rejected by the court. You've used your money and power to cover up your many sins." Dr. Na took out a syringe and injected it directly into Yi Jun's neck. Dr. Na held up 2 vials of medicine and said, "One of these could save your life, but I'm not giving it to you. Go die." Yi Jun grabbed a knife and tried to stab Dr. Na. The doctor struggled and redirected the knife to a less life-threatening area on his body. Both of them then collapsed to the ground. The secretary immediately ordered, "Get the medical team to the director's office immediately." At that moment, Director Sun led a medical team out of the elevator and into the room. Previously, Dr. Na had told Director Jun, "I'm going to let Yi Jun stab me and seriously injure me so he gets thrown in jail." Now, Director Jun ordered the doctor, "Give Yi Jun the antidote, then check on Dr. Na's wound." Although he had a punctured lung, it turned out to be the least dangerous type of chest wound. Prosecutor Jung entered and announced, "Arrest Director Yi Jun for the attempted murder of Dr. Na Yiji." Because everyone saw that Dr. Na had been seriously injured, there was no stopping the arrest. The chief prosecutor said to Prosecutor Jung, "The person who recorded Yi Jun plotting to kill the chemical company workers is dead, so we can't use it as evidence. And there's no clear evidence that he had that disabled couple injured in that accident either, so we can't arrest Lee Yi Jun." Prosecutor Jung said, "He stabbed a medical director with a knife. Please approve the arrest warrant." In 5 days, at the shareholders' meeting, Yi Jun's Huntington's disease and his plot to kill his father and brother will be exposed. "Just help me this one last time. I'll transfer to a rural province and work there forever." When Dr. Na Yiji woke up, he realized he had undergone surgery to stitch up the hole in his lung. Director Sun handed the phone to Dr. Na so he could talk to Prosecutor Jung. The prosecutor announced, "We finally got the arrest warrant after begging for 16 hours. Ugh, Dr. Na Yiji demanded of Director Jun. "Get someone to bandage my incision. I need to go arrest Lee Yi Jun first, and we'll figure things out later." The head of legal told Yi Jun, "Because you were caught in the act of attempted murder, you have to be arrested. But I'll do my best to get you released before the board of shareholders meeting." Meanwhile, pharmacist Bach and Dr. Han were trying to persuade Dr. Go. "Admit that Yi Jun ordered you to assassinate Assemblyman Jung." But Dr. Go said, "How can we possibly win against the chairman of a huge corporation like that?" At that moment, the prosecutor ran in and announced, "We got the arrest warrant for T-Gang Group Director Yi Jun, Dr. Go. If we get your testimony, we'll win against Lee Yi Jun." Dr. Go seemed to waver. Prosecutor Young escorted Yi Jun to the West Seoul Detention Center. Yi Jun acted as calmly and naturally as possible, and showed no signs of Huntington's relapse. Prosecutor Young started questioning Yi Jun, but he demanded to see his secretary. The head of legal said, "He's being investigated because we discovered a money transfer from his account to the account of Dr. Go, who killed Assemblyman Young." Hearing this news, Yi Jun lost his composure and demanded to see his secretary, no matter what. Dr. Han told Dr. Na, "Yi Jun is starting to have a mental breakdown because he realizes he's gradually losing control." At that moment, Director Sun went to the special section of the prison to see Director and asked for his help in destabilizing Yi Jun. Director mobilized his underlings in the special area to access stock trading platforms to carry out short sales to make T-Gang Group's stock price plummet. Madam O, along with Hanbit and Miss Chin, also participated in the short selling of the stock. The head of business operations informed Yi Jun, "There is a wave of short selling of our company's stock. Because the news about the director's arrest spread so quickly, it's making the sell-off even worse. Many bank directors and finance companies are refusing to help us. It seems Chairman Mo Yi-ra secretly intervened to stop them." Upon hearing the report, eldest son Yi Jun appeared flustered and experienced a relapse of his condition, demanding, "Bring me my medication now," Dr. Han cautioned. "If we give him the medication, his illness will not be exposed before the shareholder meeting." Dr. Na then instructed Nurse Bak, "Replace that medication with something else." The substitute medication was subsequently given to Yi Jun, but his condition showed no improvement. He began to tremble uncontrollably, exhibiting the unmistakable symptoms of Huntington's disease more clearly. Dr. Na approached Yi Jun and said, "I'm going to let you experience a long stay here. This is the perfect revenge," Yi Jun retorted. "I was brought here for attempted murder. But you're alive and well, working as usual, so my lawyer has requested a suspension of my detention." At that moment, the legal team leader arrived to escort Yi Jun out of the detention center. Dr. Na Yiji said to Yi Jun, "What was the second injection you administered to Yi H1? Was it Kali? I anticipated that, so I had Yi H1 prepared." "Did you think Yi H1 was really in a coma? You'll find out everything at the shareholder meeting." As Dr. Na left, Yi Jun speculated, "Could it be that my brother doesn't have Huntington's?" And all the content of the conversation was recorded. Yi Jun returned to the company and began taking medication to suppress the genetic disease. His secretary rushed in to inform him, "Yi H1 is still in a coma, confirmed by doctors and nurses. I think Na Yiji was just saying that to provoke you." However, Yi Jun still felt uncertain and uneasy. Soon after, he started talking crazy and showing signs of dementia. The next day, the T-Gang Group shareholder meeting took place. Prosecutor Young and his assistant were present to observe the proceedings. Chairman GH spoke and instructed the 8 directors on the board, "Let's vote to elect a new chairman for T-Gang Group." Dr. Na Yiji and Dr. Han wheeled Yi H1 in on a wheelchair. Dr. Na requested Yi In, the youngest daughter, "Please play the recording that was made before Director Yi Jun injected Yi H1. In the recording, Yi Jun admitted to having Huntington's disease, attempting to kill his father, and injecting Yi H1 with a drug. Prosecutor Young stated, "This isn't sufficient evidence." Dr. Na then instructed the youngest daughter, "Play the next recording." This one was recorded in the detention center. In this recording, Yi Jun admitted to injecting Yi H1 with Kali. Yi Jun stood up and said, "These recordings could easily be fabricated." Dr. Han presented Yi H1's blood test results, which showed that he had been injected with Kali. Yi Jun then asked, "Can anyone prove that I did these things?" Dr. Na exclaimed, "That person is right here." Dr. Han began to remove Yi H1's oxygen mask. Yi H1 opened his eyes and looked directly at his brother. Dr. Na asked, "Who injected you with 2 syringes that day?" It turned out that on that night, upon realizing his brother had entered, Yi H1 had injected himself with an antidote, which allowed him to awaken later. And all of this was kept secret from Chairman Mo Yi-ra. The young master, Yi H1, now pointed directly at the eldest son, Yi Jun, shocking everyone present at the meeting. Dr. Na requested Prosecutor Young to arrest Yi Jun for the murder of a family member. But the eldest son protested and demanded that no one touch him. He then began to tremble violently before collapsing to the floor, his body convulsing. Following this, the truth about Yi Jun's involvement in the Tigang Chemical Company's scandal was exposed. The murder of Assemblyman Young was also confirmed, along with the charges that he had plotted to kill his own father, which was widely reported by the press. Meanwhile, Mo Yi-ra was appointed as the chairperson of the Tigang Group. Prosecutor Young visited Madame Oh in prison, where she embraced him tightly. The two now addressed each other intimately as siblings. The prosecutor said, "I just filed the appeal for your case." The madam affectionately took Prosecutor Young's hand and stroked his cheek. They then gazed at each other adoringly, exchanging meaningful glances and signals. Meanwhile, Dr. Han continued her work evaluating criminal suspects, alongside a psychiatrist from Tigang Hospital. And the female Dr. Han continued to use her skills to take down criminals with no wasted movements. As for the eldest son, Yi Jun, he was transferred to West Seoul Penitentiary, where Dr. Na was the medical director. He tried every possible means to postpone his sentence, but all were thwarted by medical director Na Yiji. The doctor told the eldest son, "You'll stay here until you die. As long as I'm the medical director here, you won't be getting out." Director Sun called and asked Dr. Na to help him get promoted to hospital director of Tigang Hospital. Now that young Miss Chin had become the CEO, Dr. Na said, "You think I would let a corrupt individual like you become the director of Tigang Hospital?" Director Jun pleaded, "Just let me be the vice director, then." Dr. Na nodded in agreement and hung up. Afterward, Dr. Na received a call from a staff member, informing him, "Lee Yi Jun is self-harming," the medical director replied. "Just ignore him." He then smiled to himself.